Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. Get ready for heart-pounding action, thrilling adventures with fresh and unique elements, a touch of romance, and a dash of harem. Everything you're craving is right here. We're excited to have you join us on this journey. So come along to Novel Love Hearing, we're waiting for you. As a small favor, please consider sharing Novel Love Hearing with your friends, family, in YouTube comments, on Discord, Reddit, or anywhere else you hang out online. Happy listening, and enjoy the ride. Chapter 1, Tsunade. This memory. His Shin Uchiha woke up in a daze, rubbing his swollen temples as a flood of memories surged through his mind. I didn't expect this. I actually transmigrated into the world of Naruto. My past life's memories. They feel like a dream. He furrowed his brows, his fingers tracing the fabric of his sheets. A thought struck him suddenly. But where's my cheat ability? My system? Where's the ding-ding-ding notification? Muttering to himself, he sat up and pressed down on something soft, his small hand sinking into an unexpectedly plush sensation. Stop moving, kid. Ugh, I swear, I can't handle drinking anymore. And you puked all over me last night. A lazy, drowsy voice murmured beside him. Before he could react, a fair, delicate hand draped over his stomach. Feeling the warmth and softness, Shin Uchiha stiffened, his gaze slowly moving toward the figure lying next to him. Tsunade, the future Sannin, was fast asleep beside him. Her smooth, ivory skin, cascading golden hair, and youthful, delicate features made her look utterly ethereal. Her slightly disheveled nightwear did little to hide the allure of her figure, and her slow, steady breaths carried the faint scent of alcohol. A surge of adrenaline shot through him, snapping him into full wakefulness. Taking a deep breath, he caught the lingering traces of alcohol on himself, and in an instant, the events of last night resurfaced. He had been in this world for 10 years now. A mere child, 10 years old, and a member of the Uchiha clan. His relationship with Tsunade? A product of circumstance. His talent was mediocre at best. Though the Uchiha clan had taken care of him as an orphan, by the time he could fend for himself at 5 or 6, their interest waned. His peers had outpaced him. Mikoto Uchiha, his childhood friend of the same age, had already attained the level of a genin, while he lagged behind, struggling even with basic jutsu. For an Uchiha, that was disgraceful. This sense of inadequacy had driven him into a spiral of self-doubt. To cope, he frequently visited the gambling dens, drawn to the thrill as a form of escape. And that was how he got involved with Tsunade. Unlike many in Hidden Leaf Village, Tsunade did not harbor hostility toward the Uchiha. As Hashirama Senju's granddaughter, she had little interest in the old grudges between their clans. Over time, their interactions grew, and before he knew it, she had dragged him into taverns, encouraging him to drink despite his protests. Last night had been one such occasion, except this time, he had stubbornly forced down several drinks, leading to his current predicament. She pinned me down with her 106 centimeters boobs and made me drink. I'm only 10, damn it. What is wrong with this woman? Recalling the painful but erotic memories of last night, Shin Uchiha didn't know whether to be angry or happy. Of course he is happy. It was a pity that he was powerless now, otherwise he would definitely have to retaliate with his lower body part. He reached out and gave her a few light pinches in retaliation, though his current strength was far from sufficient to make an impact. Little brat. That hurts. Tsunade mumbled in her sleep but did not wake. To her, he was nothing more than a child, akin to her younger brother. Even in her drowsy state, she didn't seem bothered by his presence. Shin sighed and dragged himself to the bathroom. Splashing cold water on his face, he looked into the mirror, taking in his reflection. His youthful, handsome features were perhaps his only remarkable trait. But right now, his appearance was the least of his concerns. Because in the next instant, his dark pupils shifted, a crimson hue bled into them, and Tomoe surfaced, spinning within his irises. 1 Tomoe. 2 Tomoe. 3 Tomoe. And then, the Tomoe connected, twisting into an entirely new pattern. An intricate, 8-pointed design emerged. Mangekyo Sharingan. Shock coursed through him, followed by an overwhelming wave of exhilaration. He had directly awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Perhaps it was the sudden resurgence of his past life memories, triggering the latent potential within his soul. But his excitement quickly waned. This world was filled with monsters. Kage-level shinobi, war-hardened legends, even celestial beings. Against the looming threats of the future, the second and third great ninja wars, the emergence of the Akatsuki, the shadow of Madar's influence, even the Mangekyo felt insufficient. Not to mention the inherent drawbacks. Without an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, his vision would deteriorate with use. And he had no brother, no immediate way to evolve his eyes further. The cursed eyes. This power can't be used recklessly. Despite that, he clenched his fists, determination hardening his gaze. With these eyes, he could at least ensure his survival. With these eyes, he could kill a Kage-level opponent if necessary. The next step was understanding his ocular abilities. The Mangekyo Sharingan was unique to each wielder, reflecting their deepest emotions and desires. Closing his eyes, he focused. When he reopened them, an overwhelming surge of information flooded his mind. His left eye, soul rend, reflection, it held two functions. The first allowed him to construct abilities from his imagination, consuming both his pupil power and chakra to materialize them. The second allowed him to analyze and reconstruct techniques based on existing abilities, but the outcome was always uncertain. His right eye, soul rend, sacrifice, it allowed him to absorb and convert external forces into his own strength, though at a cost. Shin's brows furrowed. He needed to test it. The right eye's ability required a suitable subject, so he decided to experiment with the left eye first. His chakra affinities were fire, lightning, and wind, a rare combination among Uchiha. His first thought was to construct Chidori or Rasengan, but both were techniques he could learn naturally. Wasting his ocular power on them would be foolish. Instead, a more ambitious idea took root. Kekkei Genkai. Could his left eye construct one? Focusing his thoughts, he honed in on a nature transformation that would align with his affinities. Magnet style. The Mangekyo spun as his left eye activated. An intense strain shot through his body as chakra surged through his tenketsu. Blood trickled down from his eye as the ability took hold. Magnet style, magnetic pull. Without forming any seals, he raised his hand, and immediately, every iron object in the room trembled. Kunai, shuriken, needles, they all shot toward him, stopping just short of his skin, suspended in midair. Pointing toward the wooden door, he gave a silent command. Bang! 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 The weapons launched forward, embedding themselves deep into the wood. A slow smirk spread across Shin's lips. This world had given him a second chance. And he would make damn sure to survive in it, no matter the cost. Chapter 2, Healing Jutsu. If it were a sneak attack, this level of lethality would be enough to take down a Genin with ease. The only issue is my current chakra reserves. I can't use magnet style more than 3 times. Staring at the scene before him, the wooden door now riddled with iron spikes, Shin Uchiha couldn't help but smirk. The excitement in his heart practically leaped onto the paper. Acquiring a Kekkei Genkai had been unexpectedly simple, and the ability of his left eye was extraordinary. However, the slight blurriness in his vision and the overwhelming fatigue in his body quickly sobered him up. Due to my lack of chakra, the magnet style created by my Mangekyo Sharingan just now completely drained my ocular power. I need to increase my chakra reserves as soon as possible. Having decided on his next course of action, Shin Uchiha slowly made his way back to the bedroom. Tsunade was still fast asleep, snoring softly. Without hesitation, he settled into her warm and inviting embrace, resting his head against her soft chest before closing his eyes. When he finally woke up, it was to the sensation of Tsunade rubbing his face. Phew, finally awake. Seeing him stir, Tsunade let out a sigh of relief. Her expression carried a hint of guilt. Yesterday, she had dragged Shin along for drinks on a whim, momentarily forgetting that he was only a 10-year-old child. As she spoke, she pulled a small table closer, revealing a lavish lunch spread across it. Judging by its quality, it must have been quite expensive. Shin Uchiha, now fully awake, glanced at the half-eaten meal and then at Tsunade with a look of mild irritation. Tsunade, you're not expecting me to pay for the hotel and food, are you? I'm not that stingy, okay? Do I look like that kind of person? Tsunade immediately scowled at his accusation. She was dressed in light blue pajamas, her golden hair slightly messy from sleep. However, Shin didn't hesitate to retort, unfazed by her reaction. You did lose all your money yesterday, didn't you? At his words, Tsunade visibly deflated. Scratching her head awkwardly, she muttered, I'll win it back next time. Besides, you won a lot yesterday, didn't you? I was celebrating your victory. She then leaned in closer, her voice playful. The sake here is excellent, and as your big sister, I took you out to have a good time. Don't be so stingy. She even winked at him, as if pleading for mercy. Shin rolled his eyes. Was it really okay for her to treat a 10-year-old like this? This woman had no shame. One thing is separate from another. I can cover the cost, but I have a condition. Shin Uchiha held up a single finger, his expression turning serious. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. A condition? Seeing his resolute gaze, she couldn't help but be surprised. Why was this kid suddenly acting so mature, even negotiating with her? Noticing his unwavering stare, she instinctively folded her arms over her chest. The slight movement caused her loose pajamas to shift, revealing an impressive cleavage. She recalled the events of the morning. She had been half asleep and didn't think much of it at the time, but now that she reflected on it, it was slightly embarrassing. You little brat, what kind of perverted thoughts are running through your head? Did Jiraiya teach you this? She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Shin shot her a look that screamed, "You're overthinking this. I want you to teach me medical ninjutsu," he stated bluntly. "That shouldn't be a problem for you, right, Tsunade?" His slightly provocative tone made Tsunade frown. "What do you mean not a problem? I'm the foremost expert in medical ninjutsu, you know." She pinched his cheek in response, looking smug. However, after agreeing, she began to reconsider. She was well aware of Shin's background. She had already investigated his past. Was he seeking to learn medical ninjutsu because he felt he lacked talent in combat? The thought made her heart ache slightly. There was something oddly endearing about his determination. "If you're serious about it, I'll teach you," she finally said, running her fingers through his messy black hair. "As for the accommodation and meal expenses this time, yeah, those are still on you." Shin didn't concern himself with whatever thoughts were running through Tsunade's head. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick stack of ryo. Strictly speaking, all of this money had been won using Tsunade's terrible luck. He had realized early on that she was cursed when it came to gambling. If he simply bet against her, he would always win. Thanks to this, he had pocketed 500,000 ryo in a single day, far exceeding the allowance his clan provided. Tsunade's eyes lit up at the sight of the money. Unfortunately for her, Shin carefully counted out only a few bills before stuffing the rest back into his pocket. Tsunade could only grumble internally, vowing to win it all back next time. After finishing lunch, the two left the inn, making their way back toward the village. Along the way, Tsunade began teaching Shin the basics of medical ninjutsu. "The most fundamental aspect of medical ninjutsu is chakra control," she explained, her tone now serious. "You need to maintain a stable and continuous output while ensuring that the chakra has a healing effect. This requires precise control beyond the norm." She came to a stop, gesturing toward a nearby forest. "To start, I'll teach you the first stage of chakra control training, tree climbing." She approached one of the trees and casually stepped onto its trunk, walking upward as if gravity held no meaning to her. In a few strides, she reached the top of the towering tree. After effortlessly leaping down, she grinned at Shin. "All right, give it a try." This was a standard training method, one that most genin learned from their sensei. She still remembered how humiliating her first attempts had been, constantly falling on her backside. She couldn't wait to see Shin go through the same struggle. However, Shin didn't immediately rush forward. Instead, he focused inward, feeling the flow of his chakra. Ever since awakening his Mangekyo Sharingan, it was as if his body's dormant potential had been unleashed. Even after a short rest, his chakra reserves had already risen to that of an elite genin. His physical abilities had improved as well. His body, though still small, was now comparable in strength to an adult's. If he factored in the insight and hypnosis abilities of his Mangekyo, he was confident he could take on a Chunin, perhaps even a weaker Jonin. This level of growth was something he never would have imagined before. Returning his focus to the task at hand, Shin took his first step onto the tree. Crack! His foot crushed the bark instantly. Before Tsunade could even start laughing, he took a second step. Huh? Her amusement was quickly replaced with disbelief. Shin continued walking up the tree, adjusting to his newfound chakra control with each step. By the time he reached the higher branches, he was moving with ease. Tsunade could only stare, dumbfounded. Well, that's unexpected. Chapter 3, Uchiha Clan. In a matter of seconds, Shin Uchiha stood exactly where Tsunade had been just moments ago. Taking in the lush greenery surrounding him, Shin inhaled deeply, the fresh air filling his lungs as a satisfied smile spread across his face. This feeling, it's incredible. Looking down at the stunned Tsunade below, he leaped down effortlessly, landing beside her without making a single sound, a testament to his refined chakra control, now on par with hers. "How the hell did you do that?" Tsunade pointed at him, then at the tree trunk, disbelief etched all over her face. She could tell from his initial struggle that he had absolutely no prior training in chakra control. Yet, in a span of mere moments, he had not only improved but had reached a level that took even talented shinobi years to achieve. It was beyond comprehension. Scratching his cheek nonchalantly, Shin grinned and declared, "I'm just naturally gifted." Tsunade fell silent. She had heard stories about Shin, about how he had always been painfully average. Never the worst, never the best. Just another Uchiha among many. And now, here he was, boasting about extraordinary talent. It was almost laughable. Yet, she couldn't deny what she had just witnessed. Unwilling to accept such a ridiculous explanation, she dragged him to a nearby stream to test him further. If this was some kind of fluke, it wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. But as she watched him not just walk on water but somersault across the river surface with effortless ease, her expression grew even more complicated. Her gaze held a mix of awe and horror, as though she were looking at some unnatural phenomenon. Did I just discover a genius in medical ninjutsu? Even as she returned to Hidden Leaf Village, a sense of disbelief still lingered in her mind. Determined to humble him, Tsunade decided to teach him the mystical palm jutsu, a technique that only elite medical nin could master. Surely, this would stump him. When he inevitably failed, she would guide him properly. After explaining the basics, she left in a hurry, seemingly lost in thought. Shin, however, absorbed the information instantly and, without wasting time, made his way back to the Uchiha compound. Since Madara Uchiha's departure, the Uchiha clan had splintered into two factions, the Hawks, who wanted to rebel against Hidden Leaf Village, refusing to be subjugated, and the Doves, who sought to integrate peacefully into the village, rejecting the life of war and shadows. The Hawks, once led by Setsuna Uchiha, had been steadily losing influence after he was imprisoned by the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama, for conspiring against the village. Since then, the clan's situation had only worsened. Despite having control over the Hidden Leaf Village police force, the Uchiha remained widely distrusted. Their natural arrogance and superior attitude only deepened the wedge between them and the rest of the village. Following Tobirama's death, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, took office, and the Uchiha's position became even more precarious. The clan had been forcibly relocated to the outskirts of Hidden Leaf Village, isolated from the village's center. Now, with his newly awakened Mangekyo Sharingan, Shin could feel the constant surveillance on him. From the moment he entered the village, someone had been watching him. Only when he crossed into Uchiha territory did the oppressive gaze finally recede. Even if the Uchiha haven't been wiped out yet, the third Hokage and Denzo won't show any mercy when the time comes. The year was Hidden Leaf Village Year 35, and the Second Shinobi World War had already begun. Though the war had not yet escalated into a full-scale conflict, the signs were clear. The Shinobi Academy had started forcing early graduations, and the atmosphere in the village grew heavier by the day. True war was imminent. Once the battles began, Shin was certain of one thing: the Uchiha would be used as expendable pawns. I need to get stronger. Fast. Setting a one-year goal, Shin resolved to reach Jonin level strength at the very least. Anything less, and he would be nothing more than battlefield fodder. He had no intention of dying young. Power. Women. Absolute strength. The most primal of desires drove Shin forward. Upon returning to the Uchiha compound, he immediately sought out the Elders' Hall. With both Madara and Setsuna gone, the Uchiha had yet to elect a new clan leader. The Hawks and Doves remained at odds, neither side willing to submit to the other. For now, the Elders held authority, managing internal affairs and distributing resources. Shin needed to make himself stand out, to prove his worth and claim a larger share of the clan's training resources. As he approached the Elders' Hall, he caught the attention of three figures leaving the building. The young man at the front, mature beyond his years, narrowed his eyes in mild irritation upon seeing him. Shin met his gaze but quickly dismissed him, looking away as if he wasn't worth his time. That man was Fugaku Uchiha, a few years older than Shin. Having already graduated from the academy, Fugaku was deeply involved in the clan's internal politics. His father, a high-ranking elder of the Doves, had great influence, making Fugaku a well-respected figure despite his age. The two had little interaction, but Mikoto Uchiha changed that. Mikoto, the granddaughter of the Hawk faction's elder, was a beauty well-loved within the clan. Fugaku had once proposed a political marriage to unite the Hawks and Doves through her, but the idea was fiercely opposed by the Hawks, not to mention Mikoto herself. Since then, Fugaku had harbored a personal grudge, frequently sending his lackeys to trouble Shin whenever possible. Before regaining his past memories, Shin had usually avoided conflict, opting to escape rather than engage in pointless fights. But today was different. This time, he didn't slow down. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight past Fugaku and his men, heading directly for the Elders' Hall. Seeing Shin's complete disregard, Fugaku's eyes darkened with irritation. This was new. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. In the past, low-ranking Uchiha like Shin would have treaded carefully around him, yet this guy was acting like he owned the place. Go. With just a glance, Fugaku sent a silent signal. The two shinobi flanking him, Uchiha and Inahiro Uchiha, understood immediately. Though the Uchiha forbade killing among their own, teaching someone a lesson was an entirely different matter. Both Yao and Inahiro were already Gainian, and they moved quickly, sneers on their faces as they closed in on Shin. They didn't expect resistance. But what they didn't know was that Shin had changed. Chapter 4, Fight. Shin Uchiha walked through the Uchiha district, his expression as cold as ever. He didn't even spare a glance at the two boys approaching him with hostility burning in their eyes. You didn't even greet us, Shin. Seems like you still haven't learned basic etiquette. Inahiro Uchiha sneered. We wanted to continue sparring with you yesterday, but you disappeared for the whole day. Where'd you hide? Did you crawl into some hole like a damn rat? Uchiha mocked, his voice laced with malice. Both boys reached out, gripping Shin's shoulders, their intent clear. But before Yao could finish his taunt, Shin moved. In a blur, Shin's right hand shot forward, his fingers locking around Yao's throat like a vice. Before Yao could even process what was happening, Shin lifted him off the ground and slammed him down with crushing force. Bang! Dust rose from the impact as Yao choked, blood spilling from his mouth before his eyes rolled back and his body went limp. The laughter and cheering of the surrounding Uchiha clan members died instantly. Inahiro Uchiha face twisted in rage. Shin, are you looking for death? He snarled. Inahiro Uchiha's eyes turned crimson, his single Tomoe Sharingan spinning as he drew a kunai and took a step forward. You think you can attack one of us and walk away unscathed? Shin finally lifted his head. His gaze locked onto Inahiro, revealing his own crimson eyes, not a single Tomoe, but two. Illusion, Sharingan. The moment their eyes met, Inahiro's movements froze. His breathing hitched as he suddenly fell to his knees, dropping the kunai. No. No, don't. Don't kill me. Please. I'm begging you. He screamed, his face contorted in sheer terror. His own hands moved against his will, forcing his kunai into his palm, drawing blood as he sobbed and wailed. Silence. The assembled Uchiha members watched in stunned horror. Some had activated their Sharingan in instinctive reaction, but none dared to move against Shin. Shin exhaled calmly and turned his gaze toward Fugaku Uchiha, who stood among the crowd. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Fugaku felt something he had never experienced before, fear. His own Sharingan flared to life, twin Tomoe spinning, but his body remained frozen under Shin's gaze. It was as if an overwhelming pressure bore down on him, forcing him to acknowledge the gap between them. Shin's voice was quiet but carried enough weight to crush stone. I will take back everything owed to me. I have no time to play these childish games with you. And with that, he turned away, walking toward the Elders' Hall. Fugaku clenched his fists. He wanted to step forward, to stop Shin, to force him to acknowledge his authority. But his body wouldn't move. His fingers trembled, and his breath came in uneven pants. By the time he regained himself, Shin had already disappeared into the Elders' Hall. Fugaku's face twisted in humiliation. How dare he talk to me like that? He muttered. Even so, he didn't pursue him. His body still remembered the suffocating feeling of Shin's eyes locking onto his. He quickly used his Sharingan to dispel the Ganjutsu on Inahiro. The boy gasped, clutching his bleeding hand as he shuddered. He had barely returned to his senses, but the lingering fear in his eyes said it all. As the clan members carried the unconscious Yao away, murmurs spread among them. No one was talking about the beaten clan members. All eyes were on the boy who had just displayed a matured Sharingan at the age of 10. Inside the Elders' Hall, Shin stood before two men. One was an older man with gray hair, Shin Uchiha, grandfather of Mikoto Uchiha and an elder of the clan. The other was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and an unmistakable resemblance to Fugaku, Toyama Uchiha, Fugaku's father. Shin's gaze flickered to Toyama, then back to Shinji. He bowed slightly. Elder Shinji. Elder Toyama. His tone was flat, but when he said Toyama's name, there was an edge of contempt. Toyama's expression darkened. He had already heard what happened outside. He could barely stomach the idea that a mere child had humiliated his son's group so effortlessly. Shinji, on the other hand, chuckled, his old eyes gleaming. Shin, I heard you've awakened the double Tomoe Sharingan. Shin met his gaze and, without hesitation, activated his Sharingan. The two Tomoe in each eye gleamed with power. Shinji's face split into a wide grin. Good. 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 He said, laughing. Toyama scowled but said nothing. The reality was undeniable. A 10-year-old with a double Tomoe Sharingan was a prodigy. Even if he disliked Shin, there was no refuting his potential. Shinji leaned forward, placing a hand on Shin's shoulder. From now on, your training resources will be increased to the highest level. If you wish, you may move into the core district. Shin nodded. I leave it in your hands, Elder Shinji. Toyama exhaled sharply and stood up, glaring at Shin before turning on his heel and leaving. Shin watched him go, already sensing the man's hostility. It didn't matter. He would deal with him in due time. Once Toyama was gone, Shinji's expression softened. Shin, I didn't expect you to give me such a surprise. But listen to me carefully. His voice lowered, growing serious. Be careful. Hidden Leaf Village isn't as stable as it was during the time of the first and second Hokage. Your talent won't remain hidden for long. Shin remained silent, listening. Shinji sighed. Obi-Rama Senju may have distrusted us, But he at least gave us the police force to wield some authority. The current Hokage, however, Sarutobi Hiruzen, is not as soft as he appears. He wears a kind mask, but his methods are far more insidious. He tolerates us because we are useful. But never forget, the moment we become a threat, we will be crushed. And with talent like yours, Shin, you will be seen as a threat. For the first time, a smirk tugged at Shin's lips. Then let them fear me. Shinji chuckled. You remind me of Madara at times. Shin turned away. I am not Madara. I am Shin Uchiha. As he left the hall, Shinji watched him go with a mix of amusement and concern. This boy would shake the foundations of Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 5, Mikoto Uchiha. Well, I'll keep it in mind, Grandpa Shinji. Shin Uchiha nodded solemnly. Even without Shin Uchiha's warning, he had already made preparations. Shin could see the concerns in Elder Shinji's eyes. He was beginning to understand the darkness that lurked within the walls of Hidden Leaf Village. I am relieved by your words. I won't say more. Take these ninjutsu scrolls and put them away. If you ever need guidance from a senior in your training, you can request an instructor from the clan. Mikoto is waiting for you at home. Go and see her. At the end, Shin Uchiha offered a rare smile. He had watched Shin Uchiha grow up and knew his character well. That was precisely why he had been subtly maneuvering behind the scenes to bring his granddaughter closer to Shin. Mikoto's parents, his own son and daughter-in-law, had died on the battlefield. As an elder, Shin Uchiha had to consider his granddaughter's future, and from the very beginning, the only candidate he deemed worthy of her was Shin. Before, Shin's talent had been unremarkable, which caused him some concern. But now, witnessing the progress he had made, all of Shinji's worries were put to rest. Hearing that Mikoto was waiting for him at home, Shin scratched his cheek with an awkward smile. It was obvious that she was worried about him while he was away. He nodded repeatedly before selecting a few ninjutsu scrolls, along with storage scrolls and the financial resources the clan would allocate to him later. This time, he primarily chose Uchiha Kenjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu, Body Flicker Jutsu, Demonic Illusion, Hanging Bind, and a few C-rank fire-style techniques. The Uchiha clan was naturally attuned to fire style, while other elements were rarer. Shin's plan was to first master the Shadow Clone Jutsu, using clones to speed up his training. For now, his primary goal was refining his chakra control and developing his newly awakened magnet style. As he walked home, Shin mentally listed the things he needed to procure: kunai, shuriken, explosive tags. He needed to stock up on all of them. Once he mastered fire style, he could experiment with crafting high-grade explosive tags. And with his magnet style, he might even be able to develop a technique akin to a guided missile. On top of that, he needed to put the Chidori and Rasengan on his training schedule. It was going to be a busy time. Thinking of all this, Shin lifted his gaze and saw his home come into view. The large estate had been left behind by his parents. It was said that they had died on the battlefield. He was only 2 or 3 years old at the time and had few memories of them. Normally, the house was silent. But today, the scent of food lingered in the air. Recalling what Elder Shinji had told him, Shin quickened his pace. I'm back. The moment he stepped inside, he called out habitually. Welcome home, Shin-kun. A clear, feminine voice, laced with surprise, echoed from the inner room. A moment later, a girl about a head shorter than him emerged. Her jet-black hair, as soft as silk, framed her delicate face. Her large, dark eyes gleamed with warmth. She had smooth, fair skin, and if one got close, they'd catch a faint, pleasant scent. She was petite and beautiful, wearing an apron that accentuated a subtle domestic charm. Shin-kun, you disappeared all day. I was really worried. Did Inahori and the others do something to you? If they did, I won't forgive them. Mikoto stepped closer, scanning him for any injuries before letting out a relieved sigh. At the end of her sentence, she spoke with a hint of anger. Recently, she had learned that Inahori Uchiha and his group had been bullying Shin. Seeing how protective she was of him, Shin only smiled and gently ruffled her hair. Don't worry. I'm fine. Men should solve their own problems. I'd rather protect my woman than have her protect me. Shin whispered in a soft, teasing tone beside Mikoto's ear. Faced with his straightforward words and a serious look in his eyes, Mikoto froze. A shy blush crept up her cheeks, and she quickly averted her gaze. Girls in this world matured early, and Mikoto, at 10 years old, understood the implications of Shin's words. But even so, such an open confession caught her off guard. It was too much to process at once. Seeing her bashful reaction, Shin couldn't help but smile. Right now, Mikoto looked just like an adorable kitten, one that made people want to tease and spoil her. Since Mikoto wasn't raising her head anytime soon, Shin took the initiative to change the subject. I'm starving. Mikoto, I smelled something amazing when I walked in. What did you cook? Ah. It's potato stew and seafood soup. I'll go serve it now. Using the opportunity to escape, Mikoto hurriedly rushed into the kitchen. Chuckling, Shin walked into the inner room and sat down, waiting for her. In the meantime, he took out a storage scroll and retrieved the ninjutsu scrolls inside. With just a glance, he memorized their contents. Ever since I awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, my memory and learning ability have improved drastically. Controlling his chakra flow, Shin formed the ram seal. With a puff, a shadow clone appeared beside him. A quarter of my chakra was consumed. With proper control, I can create one more without completely draining myself. His fine chakra control allowed him to minimize waste, which was why he could create multiple clones. If an ordinary genin tried to use the shadow clone jutsu, they'd likely exhaust themselves in a single attempt. With that, Shin created a second shadow clone and sent them to train ninjutsu in the backyard. Just then, Mikoto returned, carrying a pot of stew. She paused at the sight before her. Shadow clone jutsu? Shin-kun, you actually learned it? Her tone was filled with surprise. She recognized this jutsu, but she never expected Shin to use it so effortlessly. In her understanding, he shouldn't have had access to such a technique. I just applied for it at the Elders' Hall. Shin explained casually. To be precise, I asked Grandpa Shinji. He looked at her and smirked. Just now, he told me you were here. Also, he activated his Sharingan, the two tomoe in each eye spinning slightly. I awakened my eyes. By revealing it now, he could prevent her from worrying unnecessarily. Mikoto's breath hitched as she stared at him. She understood what this meant. Shin Uchiha was no longer the weakling the clan once looked down upon. The real battle was only beginning. Chapter 6, Third Hokage. I only have one tomoe, Shin-kun, you are amazing. Mikoto Uchiha set down the pot and looked at Shin Uchiha with admiration. No wonder Shin seemed different today, more confident, mature, and undeniably charming. Mikoto Uchiha, her cheeks still tinged with pink, was genuinely happy for Shin. At the same time, her sharp mind quickly pieced together a possibility. Could Shin Uchiha's direct confession earlier have been something he had already discussed with her grandfather? If that were the case, then the situation between her and Shin. Lost in her own thoughts, Mikoto sat down, suddenly behaving like a well-trained young wife. Throughout the meal, she kept sneaking glances at Shin, her expression unfocused. When she was about to leave, Shin pointed toward the bathroom and asked, Mikoto, do you want to take a bath before heading back? A bath? Catching the amused glint in Shin's eyes, Mikoto suddenly had a bad feeling. She didn't refuse, as she had planned to bathe when she got home anyway. But when she saw Shin follow her inside, Mikoto, who already understood the difference between men and women, blushed like a boiled octopus. She had always bathed alone. Sharing a bath with someone else was an entirely different matter. Instinctively, she wrapped her towel tightly around her body, shrinking into the warm water, her large eyes cautiously watching Shin as he entered. Despite being only 10 years old, Shin Uchiha already stood over 1.5 meters tall. Though he had no previous talent in ninjutsu, he had trained his body diligently. The Uchiha clan's wealth ensured he was well-fed and in peak condition, far superior to the average child his age. Tall, sharp-featured, with visible muscle definition and a natural presence, he was undeniably handsome. For any woman, that was a dangerous combination. Mikoto's heart pounded in her chest. She covered her flushed face with her hands, but her fingers parted slightly, allowing her to peek at Shin. Noticing her shy reaction, Shin smirked and turned toward the bathtub. As their eyes met, Mikoto instantly submerged her head, retreating into the water like a startled rabbit. And Shin, like a predator closing in on its prey, moved forward. Before Mikoto could resurface, Shin reached out and tickled her underarms. Ah! That tickles. Gasping, she sprang up from the water, glaring at him in embarrassment. But Shin wasn't paying attention to her angry expression. Instead, his breath hitched at the sight before him. Droplets of water cascaded down her smooth, pink-tinged skin, her collarbones glistening under the dim light. The sight was mesmerizing. Shin-kun, this is really embarrassing. Mikoto whined, her voice soft with shyness. Unable to handle his intense gaze, she crouched back down, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Though her tone carried reprimand, it lacked any real bite, and Shin could sense her hesitation. Emboldened, he slowly reached forward. His fingers skimmed the water, sending ripples across the surface, before gently pulling Mikoto into his embrace. Warmth. Softness. The subtle fragrance of her wet skin. Mikoto tensed against him, her entire body rigid from the unfamiliar closeness. I just want someone to hold. Shin murmured, his voice low and magnetic. Mikoto, will you grant me that? His breath tickled her ear, making her heart skip a beat. "Why yes." Mikoto answered without thinking, her mind blank, body weak against him. She had no will to resist. Shin, however, knew not to push too far. He wanted to enjoy this moment but understood the importance of patience. If he rushed things, it could all backfire. For now, getting used to each other like this was enough. And besides, he had his own limitations. Mikoto still needed training. Her body was fragile. If he were too hasty, it would only cause problems later. As he pondered, enjoying the soft warmth in his arms, Mikoto gradually relaxed. Through their closeness, she could sense the exhaustion hidden beneath Shin's usual confidence. An hour later, Mikoto hurriedly left, never once looking back. Even as the cool night air brushed her face, her cheeks still burned with heat. Shin, missing the sensation of her warmth, sighed before dispelling his shadow clone. A flood of fatigue and training memories overwhelmed his mind. His body slumped onto the bed, and as he lay back, he began integrating the shadow clone's experience. The mental and physical burden is heavy, but for now, I can endure it. I've nearly mastered the fireball jutsu, and my phoenix fire jutsu and gan jutsu techniques are progressing well. A little more training should do it. I still need a mentor to refine my swordsmanship. Only through real combat will I gain true insight. As for medical ninjutsu, maybe I should test the mystical palm jutsu on an injured animal tomorrow. With those thoughts, Shin closed his eyes and began refining his chakra using the Uchiha clan's exclusive training method. Unlike the standard techniques used outside, the Uchiha's method was far superior, efficient, precise, and tailored for their bloodline. Meanwhile, across the village, in the Hokage's office, the news of Shin awakening his second Tomoe had reached Sarutobi Hiruzen. The third Hokage, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat, calmly scanned the report. Another Uchiha has awakened their Sharingan. Double Tomoe at 10 years old. He exhaled through his pipe, then muttered, "Tell Denzo to keep an eye on him." Young, talented Uchiha were dangerous. Their potential needed to be guided, or controlled. We must strengthen his training and instill the will of fire within him. We cannot afford another Uchiha turning into a traitor like Setsuna. Sarutobi, ever cautious, carried on the paranoia of his predecessor, Senjudobi Rama. The Uchiha were strong. Too strong. And their ambitions made them dangerous. Unlike Tobirama, however, Sarutobi did not want to outright alienate them. The ninja world was already on the brink of war. Another great conflict was inevitable. Right now, Hidden Leaf Village could not afford to weaken the Uchiha. Their strength was necessary for the village's survival. If a genius had emerged within their ranks, then the best course of action was clear. Send him to the battlefield. Sarutobi's gaze darkened as he made his decision. If Shin Uchiha was so talented, then he would serve his purpose well. Whether he survived or perished would be up to fate. Chapter 7, Training in the early morning. Shin Uchiha woke up earlier than usual. Although he had only refined chakra for 2 or 3 hours the previous night, his total chakra reserves had doubled. This refining speed is dozens of times faster than before. Feeling invigorated, he had a quick breakfast before heading to a weapons shop in Hidden Leaf Village to stock up on supplies. With a space-sealing scroll strapped to his back, he formed a shadow clone midway through the journey. The clone transformed into the likeness of a wandering academy student who had conveniently skipped class, ensuring that if anyone checked, he was still within the village. Meanwhile, the real Shin Uchiha made his way to the Uchiha district, leveraging the Hidden Leaf Village Police Department's authority to slip out of the village unnoticed. His destination was a dense forest nearby. With graduation approaching, the Ninja Academy no longer held anything of value for him. The only reason to attend was the chance to sit next to Mikoto Uchiha in class. Then again, he could simply go home later and have her all to himself, which was far more appealing than wasting time in school. For serious training, the seclusion of the forest was much better. He didn't want to reveal too much in the clan's training grounds. Gathering chakra to his legs, Shin Uchiha bent his knees slightly before launching himself into the air, landing effortlessly on a thick tree branch over 10 meters high. From this vantage point, his keen eyes scanned the forest, quickly catching sight of a tiger prowling below. This wasn't just any tiger, it was enormous, at least the size of 3 grown men, marking it as a low-level ninja beast. Although it possessed chakra, it lacked the intelligence of a proper summoned creature. Most ninjas ignored such beasts, though some captured them to use as disposable summons. Unlike true contract creatures, these beasts had no intelligence or ability to communicate, making them little more than living weapons. For an ordinary Genin, taking down such a beast would be difficult. Shin Uchiha, however, was no ordinary Genin. From the sealing scroll on his back, he withdrew several kunai attached with explosive tags. Dashing across the treetops, he positioned himself directly above the tiger, Roar, roar, roar. Sensing an unusual presence, the tiger looked up sharply, baring its gleaming white fangs. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from its throat. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 kunai cut through the air, streaking toward the tiger. Roar. The beast let out an earth-shaking bellow, unleashing a sudden gust of wind from its maw that deflected the incoming kunai. Magnet style. With a mere flex of his fingers, Shin Uchiha manipulated the kunai midair, redirecting them towards the tiger's vital points from 3 different angles. The neck, the back, the waist. Boom. 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 The detonating tags erupted in a violent chain of explosions, shaking the surrounding trees. When the smoke cleared, the tiger lay on the ground, its body charred and torn apart, the scent of burnt flesh thick in the air. The power of a single explosive tag is comparable to a hand grenade, enough to kill most ninjas who don't specialize in physical endurance. Most shinobi had fragile bodies, and a well-placed explosive tag was more than enough to be fatal. Just as he was about to approach the carcass, Shin Uchiha's eyes narrowed. The scent of blood had attracted company. From the shadows of the trees, a pack of 7 or 8 wolves emerged, their predatory eyes flicking between the fallen tiger and the lone shinobi. They didn't hesitate. With a chorus of snarls, the wolves lunged. Fire style, Phoenix Fire Jutsu. Shin's hands blurred through seals at lightning speed, completing the jutsu in under 2 seconds before spewing out a rapid barrage of small fireballs. Each flame missile was guided with precision by his Mangekyo Sharingan, ensuring every single shot hit its mark. Boom. 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 The wolves howled in agony as they were incinerated or blown back by the concussive force of the explosions. Shin paid them no further mind, instead stepping toward the tiger's corpse and placing his palm on its still warm flesh. Time to test his right eye's ability, soul sacrifice. Sacrifice. The intricate 8-pointed design in his right eye spun rapidly, and a jet black flame ignited in his palm, engulfing the tiger's corpse. Within seconds, the flesh was consumed, and a thin wisp of energy was drawn into his eye before dispersing throughout his body. He exhaled sharply as the vitality spread, reinforcing his muscles and slightly increasing his chakra reserves. If I had to put this into game terms. Chakra plus 10, Constitution plus 1. A smirk played at the corner of his lips. The increase was small, but it was there. And unlike mere training, this was immediate. Soul sacrifice was unique in that it had minimal chakra cost when used on the dead. But against the living, the energy expenditure was far greater, making it impractical unless the target was immobilized. His gaze shifted back to the still breathing, but crippled, wolves. He cracked his knuckles. Mystic Palm Jutsu. Using the nearly perfect training dummies in front of him, Shin attempted to refine his medical ninjutsu. His initial attempts were clumsy, possibly due to his lack of formal medical knowledge. No matter. Those that he failed to heal properly were promptly used as fuel for soul sacrifice. After a long and bloody session, only 1 wolf survived intact, while the others had been sacrificed to nourish his growing strength. The wolves weren't as valuable as the tiger, but hey, scraps are still meat. Satisfied with his progress, Shin formed a hand seal and created 5 shadow clones. 2 clones focused on refining his ninjutsu. Another 2 worked on developing Rasengan and Chidori. The last one went hunting for more training materials. As for Shin himself, he sat cross-legged on the surface of a stream, refining his chakra while contemplating his next step. I should develop a taijutsu style suited for me. At the moment, he was proficient in ninjutsu, and his Mangekyo Sharingan made him near immune to most ganjutsu. However, his hand-to-hand combat still had room for improvement. The standard strong fist style was too simple. It relied purely on brute force, with little finesse or adaptability. That wasn't enough. He needed something versatile, something deadly. His mind drifted to 2 potential inspirations: lightning chakra armor, the One Piece World Marine 6 styles or also called as Navy 6 styles, and a refined, chakra-based martial art that could maximize his body control. A smirk spread across his lips. Time to forge my own path. Chapter 8, Tsunade. With his own lightning chakra as the core, Shin Uchiha began to manifest the lightning-style chakra mode. With his physical prowess and chakra as the foundation, he also developed a version of the Marine 6 styles infused with chakra. The chakra he had accumulated over time was nearly depleted in an instant. His left Sharingan's power was being drained continuously, his vision blurred, but in exchange, his lightning chakra instinctively spread throughout his body. A thin veil of electricity coated him entirely, arcs of blue lightning crackling along his form. In that moment, his strength, speed, and durability were enhanced significantly. However, the transformation lasted only a second before it dissipated, his chakra reserves already running dry. Still, from that brief experience, Shin Uchiha had successfully deduced the principles behind the lightning-style chakra mode. His adaptation of the 6 styles was not identical to the original, as he had incorporated chakra into each technique. Instant transmission. Instead of stepping multiple times in an instant, he used a burst of chakra from the soles of his feet to achieve high-speed movement. Moonwalk. Similar to water walking, but by forcefully releasing chakra into the air, he created an aerial stepping effect, allowing brief airborne mobility. Tempest kick and finger pistol. By bursting chakra at the moment of impact, he could unleash vacuum slashes and concentrated bullet-like force. It's different from the original techniques, but it suits me better this way, he mused. If he had to use the original instant transmission, which required stopping the ground dozens of times within 0.36 seconds, he'd never master it in a short period. But at the moment, he had no energy to train any further. Executing reflection twice in a row had pushed his body to its limits. TCH, my left eye's vision is getting worse. This is a pain. I wonder if I can recover it by absorbing the Sharingan's pupil power from another source. Feeling the strain in his eye, Shin Uchiha frowned. Until he figured out how to replenish his pupil power, he had no choice but to seal off his left eye's abilities. After a short rest under a large tree, his vision slightly improved. Noticing that the sun was now at its peak, he decided to head back. At the same time, his shadow clone in the village had seemingly drawn attention. Tsunade? What is she doing here looking for me? Without hesitation, Shin Uchiha used the substitution jutsu to swap places with his clone, ensuring a seamless transition. As he walked out of the alleyway, his demeanor had changed, his gaze was sharper, his expression more fluid compared to the stiff and mechanical face of his clone. Tsunade, who had been standing by the roadside, immediately caught the difference. Hey, so you're back? Good. We still have more medical ninjutsu training to do. Huh? I thought learning mystical palm jutsu was enough? Seeing Tsunade's eager expression, Shin Uchiha couldn't shake the feeling that she had ulterior motives. Noticing his wariness, Tsunade ruffled his dark hair in annoyance. Medical ninjutsu isn't just about one technique, you know. There's plenty more to learn. She then crossed her arms and gave him a firm look. Honestly, kid, I think your talent in other areas is pretty average. Why not focus on medical ninjutsu? You could actually accomplish something with it. Tsunade was being sincere. She had no idea that Shin Uchiha had awakened the double Tomoe Sharingan already. What she did notice, however, was his extraordinary chakra control the day before, and it genuinely impressed her. Besides, with Shin nearing graduation, Tsunade figured she'd take him under her wing if possible. That is, if he stopped calling her by her full name like some brat. The first time they met, he had called her Aunt Tsunade, which nearly got him killed. After a lot of nagging, she made him change it to just Tsunade. But he refused to call her big sis despite her insistence. Now, she wanted him to address her as master. Looking at her confident grin, Shin Uchiha immediately sensed that she was up to something. That said, her mischief was likely nothing malicious, just her trying to mess with him in some way. After considering his options, Shin Uchiha made his decision. Fine, I'll learn. But I want to bring someone with me. Bring someone? Tsunade raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he was planning. Shin Uchiha's expression was serious. I want Mikoto to train with me. She's my classmate and childhood friend. If possible, I want her to become a medical nin in the future. His request wasn't for some trivial reason. With the second Shinobi World War looming on the horizon, it was inevitable that Mikoto Uchiha would be sent to the battlefield. Even he wasn't sure if he could always be there to protect her. If she learned medical ninjutsu and got into the medical corps, her survival chances would increase exponentially. Tsunade nearly burst out laughing at his request. Oh, so that's how it is. Here I'm giving you special guidance, and you're out here trying to get your girlfriend in too? Shin Uchiha stood straight and smirked. That's just normal consideration. Strictly speaking, my ideal type is more like you, Tsunade. His voice was calm, his gaze unshaken. However, his eyes betrayed him, fixating on something else entirely. A certain deep valley of snow-white skin was captivating his attention like an inescapable black hole. Tsunade leaned in closer, nearly touching his face. If she moved forward just a little more, their lips would meet. Shin Uchiha, unfortunately, lacked the guts to follow through. If he tried anything here, he'd be lucky to make it out with just a few broken bones. Tsunade blinked in surprise before following his gaze downward. Realizing where he was staring, she instantly grew furious. You little brat. You're even worse than Jiraiya. Without hesitation, she swung her fist at his head. But the moment she struck, she hit nothing. Shin Uchiha had effortlessly dodged her punch, as light as a feather. Oh? Tsunade hadn't put much force into the strike, but the fact that he dodged so easily meant his reflexes were considerably advanced. Crossing her arms, she studied him more carefully now. The two locked eyes for a few moments before Shin Uchiha smirked and took a step back. Lady Tsunade, my frail body can't handle your monstrous strength. Besides, what you just did was very close to sexual harassment. Tsunade's face twitched in irritation, her chest heaving. You were literally staring at my... I was just stating my preferences. Shin said smoothly. Also, Lady Tsunade, you might want to check your surroundings. Turning, she saw a growing crowd watching them. Nearby villagers were whispering, watching the scene unfold. Tsunade, realizing how it looked, immediately grabbed Shin by the collar and dragged him away, ignoring the murmurs of "So Lady Tsunade likes younger men? And damn, no wonder I'm still single." Embarrassed and fuming, she grabbed Shin Uchiha by the collar and dragged him away before any more rumors spread. Chapter 9, Training with Tsunade. By the way, Tsunade, can I bring Mikoto with me? Shin, who had been pulled aside into an empty corner by Tsunade, spoke with a calm expression. Tsunade, having been tormented by him to the point of exhaustion, waved her hand dismissively. Fine, fine. I give up, you little brat. Alright, I'll go get Mikoto then. Where should we meet? Just came to my house. With that, Shin, taking the initiative, quickly disappeared. Watching him leave, Tsunade had a complicated expression on her face. That kid. When there are a lot of people around, he'll still give me some respect and call me Tsunade-sama. But his words, ugh, he's venomous and sweet at the same time. Tsunade crossed her arms beneath her ample chest, sighing with an unreadable emotion. When he had said he liked her, she had felt genuinely pleased. Being admired by a kid like him meant she still had her charm. Besides, Shin was undeniably easy on the eyes. It was obvious that he'd grow up into a handsome man, unlike Jiraiya, whose face made her want to punch him more often than not. What were those idiots saying earlier? That I like younger boys? Tsunade muttered, frowning. Is that why I'm still single? If I really wanted someone. Her voice trailed off as she walked into her home. Finding a boyfriend wasn't easy for her. As the granddaughter of the first Hokage, most men were too intimidated to approach her. On top of that, she had high standards. She didn't like ugly men, simple as that. Ideally, he'd be handsome, strong, and wouldn't nag her about her gambling habits. Not too much to ask, right? Her thoughts suddenly drifted to Shin. Other than his age, he met all of her criteria. Tsunade sat down, suddenly restless. Was she really starting to think that way about him? Was she? No, no, no. She muttered, shaking her head and pressing her fingers to her temples. I've just been single too damn long. But the more she told herself to stop thinking about it, the more Shin's face popped into her mind. Tsunade, I'm here. Shin's voice rang from outside. Ah. Tsunade jolted upright, quickly patting her flushed cheeks before taking a deep breath to calm down. I can't believe a little brat actually managed to distract me. She grumbled, straightening her clothes and heading outside. When she stepped out, her gaze immediately landed on Mikoto Uchiha, standing next to Shin. Mikoto, dressed in the traditional Uchiha uniform, looked like the perfect girl next door type, cute, composed, and undeniably elegant. Tsunade narrowed her eyes slightly. For some reason, she didn't like looking at her. No wonder this kid wants to learn medical ninjutsu. She muttered under her breath. She's just as cute as I was when I was younger. Tsunade sighed before putting on a smile and welcoming them in. She could afford to be casual in front of Shin, but with Mikoto here, she found herself instinctively holding back a little. Tsunade-sama. I admire you so much. I never thought I'd get to meet you in person like this. The moment they stepped inside, Mikoto's excitement was evident. She practically sparkled with admiration. Tsunade felt a pang of guilt for her earlier pettiness. I'm happy to meet you too, Mikoto. She said with a soft smile. You're adorable, I bet a lot of people like you. Mikoto shyly glanced at Shin, who, as always, looked completely unaffected. I think we should start training soon. He said flatly. Tsunade rolled her eyes at his fake indifference and went to grab some books. The foundation of medical ninjutsu starts with this. She explained seriously. If you don't master the theory behind the mystical palm jutsu, you'll end up killing someone instead of saving them. She flipped open a thick medical textbook. You need to understand human anatomy, organs, pressure points, chakra pathways, where to stop bleeding, how to temporarily suppress poison, all of it. Shin remained quiet, but her words reminded him of the wild wolves he had killed in the forest. Well, then, I'll start learning. He said simply, picking up the book and scanning its contents. His left eye, soul, reflection, allowed him to internalize knowledge with extreme efficiency. The more he learned, the easier it became to perform advanced techniques. Medical ninjutsu wasn't just about saving others, it was about survival. If he could heal himself in battle, it meant he could keep fighting longer. Tsunade watched him with mild surprise. This is the first time I've seen this kid so well behaved. The last time he looked this peaceful was when he was asleep. A faint memory surfaced, Shin's head resting against her chest as he slept soundly that morning. Her cheeks burned again, and she quickly averted her gaze. Tsunade-sama, what does this mean? Mikoto's voice brought her back to reality. The girl was pointing at a passage in the book, looking confused. Oh, right, that means. Tsunade quickly shifted into teaching mode, explaining the text seriously. The afternoon passed quickly. Tsunade went from being impressed, to astonished, to just outright numb. The reason? The stack of books next to Shin. In mere hours, he had memorized what would normally take months to learn. Training a medical nin was far more difficult than training a regular shinobi. But for Shin, the usual barriers simply didn't exist. After multiple tests, Tsunade confirmed he had genuinely absorbed all of it. And the practical training? That was even more ridiculous. With the foundational knowledge solidified, his mystical palm jutsu was now precise. He successfully healed an injured fish in a single try. And after a few repetitions, he performed it flawlessly, with no wasted chakra. Mikoto, by comparison, was still a prodigy in her own right. In Tsunade's eyes, she was a genius. But next to Shin? It took her half an hour of repeated attempts before she could even begin stabilizing chakra flow properly. Shin, meanwhile, was already on the level of a trained medical nin. The mystical palm jutsu required precise chakra control, adjusting output based on the patient's condition. Too much chakra could damage healthy tissue, causing severe complications or even coma. Even for Tsunade, a veteran of countless battles, the technique wasn't as effortless as what she was seeing from Shin. Yet here he was, pulling off medical ninjutsu as if it were second nature. Tsunade leaned back, rubbing her temples as she sighed. Why the hell does this brat make everything look so damn easy? Chapter 10, Uzumaki Mido. I'm a master now, right? Shin Uchiha felt he had learned well today and looked at Tsunade with a confident smile. Tsunade nodded subconsciously, then quickly shook her head. Humphrey, you still have a lot to learn, don't get too full of yourself. As she spoke, Tsunade cast a pleading glance at Shin Uchiha. She didn't want to lose face in front of Mikoto Uchiha and hoped Shin would play along. Shin immediately understood and put on a humble expression to cooperate. After all, Tsunade had helped him so much, giving her some face was the least he could do. Unfortunately, Mikoto Uchiha wasn't fazed by Tsunade's words at all. She simply looked at Shin with admiration. I've been studying this for so long and still haven't mastered it, but Shin-kun managed to read the whole thing already. The few books she had read were nothing compared to the mountain of scrolls studied by Shin Uchiha. The sharp contrast made Mikoto realize just how vast the gap between her and Shin truly was. Mikoto, who already considered herself Shin Uchiha's future wife, wasn't jealous of his talent. Instead, she felt proud of it. She had even spoken with her grandfather, Shin Uchiha-ji, that morning, and he had expressed his support for her choice. Seeing the affectionate atmosphere between the two, Tsunade grew irritated and sent them home early. She herself didn't linger and instead made her way to the Senju clan's old compound. The Senju had followed Hashirama's vision and fully integrated into Hidden Leaf Village. Now, only a few people remained in their once grand residence. Tsunade was here to see her grandmother, Uzumaki Mido, who had chosen to stay in the clan's home. As she entered the courtyard, she spotted an elderly woman with long, crimson hair seated in a chair. Despite her age, Mido still radiated an aura of wisdom and quiet power. Tsunade beamed and ran forward. Grandma, I'm back. Uzumaki Mido looked up at her granddaughter with a knowing smile. Tsunade, how are things going with that Uchiha boy? Tsunade sighed and muttered, his talent is even more ridiculous than what I told you yesterday. Then, in a louder voice, she added, he's a little brat, but he knows how to give me face in front of outsiders. My impression of him is neither good nor bad. Her gaze flickered slightly as she spoke, as if trying to downplay her true thoughts. Mido observed her carefully, then nodded. Her expression remained neutral. He should be graduating soon. If you approve of him, Tsunade, you should consider taking him as your apprentice. Tsunade hesitated. I was already thinking about it, but why are you pushing this, Grandma? I feel like you have your own reasons for taking an interest in him. Uzumaki Mido simply shook her head, sighing internally. Her granddaughter was skilled, strong, and brilliant in her own way. But she had never been one for politics. As a student of Saratobe Hiruzen, she had inherited his worldview and couldn't always see the bigger picture from an independent perspective. But Mido had lived through it all. As the wife of Hashirama Senju, she had been at the heart of Hidden Leaf Village since its founding. And she had seen what was happening now. Since the third Hokage had taken power, she had watched Hidden Leaf Village's inner workings shift. With the new war raging across the continent, Mito could feel change on the horizon. The Senju clan had been integrated into Hidden Leaf Village as per Hashirama's wishes, but that had only made it easier to break them apart. Under Saratobi's leadership, the backbone of the Senju had been systematically deployed to battlefields, ensuring that each generation lost more and more of its strength. Once the current generation perished, the Senju would exist only in name. And Nawaki, her intended successor for the clan, was too young, too naive. He lacked his grandfather's strength and his father's cunning. Mito couldn't entrust him with the future of the clan. She had no illusions. Her time was running out. And when she was gone, there would be no one left to protect what remained of the Senju. That was why she had pushed Tsunoda to train Shin Uchiha. Not just for the boy's sake, but because she saw an opportunity to unite the two greatest clans of Hidden Leaf Village. The Uchiha had been pushed to the margins, just like the Senju. But unlike Saratobi and his advisors, Mito didn't fear the Uchiha. She saw them for what they were, the only clan powerful enough to challenge the manipulation running through Hidden Leaf Village's veins. She had known of Shin's awakening of the Sharingan long before Tsunoda mentioned it. If this boy could be nurtured properly, if he had the right character, he could become the bridge between the Senju and the Uchiha. A true alliance between those two clans would be powerful enough to prevent both from being erased from history. And then there was the matter of the Uzumaki. Hidden Leaf Village had received multiple distress calls from the land of whirlpools. The Uzumaki clan was under siege, and the other great nations wanted their sealing techniques for themselves. But despite being their supposed ally, Hidden Leaf Village had done nothing to help. Mito wasn't blind. She knew why. Saratobi and his council had already secured Uzumaki sealing techniques. They no longer saw any strategic reason to protect the clan itself. Mito clenched her fists. She wouldn't allow this. She gently stroked Tsunoda's hair and finally spoke. Tsunoda, I need you to tell Hiruzen that my health is failing. It's time to find a new Jinchuriki for the Nine Tails. Tsunoda stiffened. Grandma, what are you saying? You're still strong, Mito cut her off with a smile. I know my own body, Tsunoda. Just do as I ask. And make sure the new host is from the Uzumaki clan. Tsunoda hesitated but ultimately nodded. She didn't fully understand why Mito was so insistent on the host being an Uzumaki, but she wouldn't argue. With a heavy heart, she made her way to the Hokage's office. She relayed Mito's words. When she finished, Saratobi Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, a contemplative look in his eyes. After a moment, he spoke. I understand. However, the land of whirlpools is in a precarious position. Many forces have their eyes on them, and they may seek to eliminate the Uzumaki altogether. His voice was gentle, but Tsunoda didn't miss the underlying message. Hidden Leaf Village wasn't going to intervene. Chapter 11, Uzumaki Clan. When Tsunoda heard the news from Hiruzen Saratobi, a deep sense of unease settled in her gut. Something was wrong. The situation in Hidden Ecchi Village had turned dire. Why was she only hearing about it now? Hidden Leaf Village and the Uzumaki clan had always been close allies, yet there had been no word, no warning. That silence itself was suspicious. The thought flashed through her mind, but Tsunoda didn't dwell on it. Instead, she stepped forward, urgency in her voice. Then sent reinforcements immediately. She demanded. Hiruzen sighed, his face creased with the weight of his responsibilities. All the great nations have their eyes on Hidden Leaf Village. Most of our forces have already been deployed to the front lines. Even Jiraiya and Orochimaru are being mobilized for battle. Right now, it's impossible for Hidden Leaf Village to send aid to the land of whirlpools. His tone was grave, almost apologetic. The meaning behind his words was clear. Hidden Leaf Village was struggling to protect itself. There was no hope for Hidden Ecchi Village. Tsunoda clenched her fists. She wanted to argue, to fight against the reality of the situation, but she had no counter. Hiruzen, seeing her reaction, softened his voice. Regardless, the Uzumaki clan has always been Hidden Leaf Village's most trusted ally. I will make the necessary arrangements. His words brought her little comfort, but at least he was taking it seriously. As she turned to leave, something occurred to her. Pausing, she glanced back at the old man. Hiruzen tensed at the movement, his mind already racing. Had she caught on to the delays? Was she going to press him further? He was already preparing another speech when Tsunoda casually said, Old man, I need a favor. I want to take on 2 apprentices. They're from the Uchiha clan. Hiruzen's expression sharpened. The Uchiha? Which 2? Tsunoda saw no reason to hide it. One's named Shin Uchiha. I met him a few times at the gambling den. Played a couple of rounds against him. The kid's got a good sense for medical ninjutsu, so I figured I'd take him under my wing. Hiruzen's lips twitched. Meeting a future student at a casino? That was certainly unique. But given that this was Tsunoda, it wasn't all that surprising. The other is Mikoto Uchiha. She's Shin's childhood sweetheart, also talented. But mostly, the brat insisted on bringing her along. The name Shin Uchiha immediately caught Hiruzen's attention. He had already taken note of the boy's potential. And if Tsunade trained him, that was an opportunity. If he could be nurtured properly, molded in the right way, perhaps a new Kagami Uchiha could be born. Hiruzen made up his mind in an instant. His expression softened, and he gave Tsunade a warm, approving smile. I'll approve it. The academy will be advancing graduation soon. The war is escalating, and young shinobi must be prepared. Tsunade nodded and left, satisfied. Not long after, Denzo stormed into the Hokage's office, his face dark with displeasure. Hiruzen. He began, his voice cold, why did you assign Shin Uchiha to Tsunade? I already marked him for root. Hiruzen barely reacted. He had expected this. Denzo continued, his irritation clear. I was preparing to bring him in, and then you just hand him over to that gambler? Do you realize how much of an asset he could be? Hiruzen met Denzo's glare with a calm, steady gaze. Root is not the right place for Shin Uchiha. We need another Kagami Uchiha. Denzo understood immediately. The third Hokage wanted to shape the boy into a loyal shinobi of Hidden Leaf Village, rather than let him be swallowed by the Uchiha's growing discontent. This wasn't about nurturing a soldier, it was about political maneuvering. Denzo's grip tightened, his anger simmering beneath the surface. He wanted to argue, to push back, but in the end, he couldn't. Hiruzen was still Hokage. Instead, he shifted topics, his voice lowering. And what about Hidden Village? Hiruzen exhaled, taking a long, slow drag from his pipe. The Uzumaki's sealing jutsu is too dangerous. If it falls into enemy hands, it will be a disaster. Denzo narrowed his eyes. Are you suggesting the usual approach? Hiruzen said nothing. The meaning was clear, they would allow the Uzumaki clan to burn. They would watch from the shadows, ensuring the destruction was total, so that no rival village could gain control of their techniques. And then, Hidden Leaf Village would swoop in and collect the remnants of their knowledge for itself. Denzo smirked. Humphrey. You're as ruthless as ever. Hiruzen sighed, as if the weight of the world rested upon his shoulders. Mito has sent word. She wants the next Jinchuriki to come from the Uzumaki clan. Denzo scoffed. TCH. A host for the Kyuubi has no right to make demands. His tone was full of disdain. The Uzumaki clan, once powerful, had lost their standing. They were no longer a force to be reckoned with, just a name, a bloodline with valuable abilities, but little political weight. Hiruzen didn't bother to argue. Instead, he turned his gaze back to Denzo, his voice unreadable. Then, you know what to do? Denzo dipped his head slightly. Root understands. With that, he turned and left. Back in the depths of Root headquarters, Denzo sat in his chair, fingers steepled as he contemplated his next move. His voice was low, a whisper to the darkness. If she wants an Uzumaki Jinchuriki, then we'll find her an orphan. Soon after, his operatives received their orders. Their mission, infiltrate the ruins of Hidden Village. They were to remain in the shadows, watching, waiting. And when the time was right, they would strike. Chapter 12, Tsunade-sensei. Early in the morning, Shin Uchiha had no choice but to follow Mikoto to the academy. Today was the day of graduation, and teams would be assigned their Jonin-sensei. He had to show his face. But when the door slid open, Shin Uchiha's expression turned from disinterest to surprise. Tsunade? The woman in question, golden hair tied into a ponytail, stood before them in her Hidden Leaf Village flak jacket, arms folded under her ample chest. Even the standard Dishu uniform couldn't fully conceal her impressive figure. Her smirk was self-satisfied, a glint of amusement in her brown eyes. Ha! Didn't see this one coming, did you? She laughed, her tone full of smugness. Shin Uchiha blinked. The Hokage actually let you take a team? Tsunade's eye twitched, but before she could retort, Mikoto, standing gracefully beside Shin, beamed. Lady Tsunade, it's great that you're leading our team. Tsunade nodded rapidly, pleased with the response. Damn right. From now on, you'll be calling me sensei. She turned to Shin and jabbed a finger at him. And don't you forget it. Shin rolled his eyes. Shouldn't a team leader be tested before they're allowed to take students? The room fell silent. Tsunade, who had been basking in her moment of glory, froze. Her victorious grin stiffened as the reality hit her. She still had to conduct the official Genin test. Her nostrils flared as she glared at Shin. TCH, as if I needed you to remind me. And don't even think about failing on purpose. Shin didn't bother responding, just smirking slightly. In truth, he already knew the test was just a formality. Given his performance at the academy, he could pass without breaking a sweat. Not that it mattered, Tsunade wasn't the type to send them back even if they failed. No, This was just her way of flexing her authority. Before long, the three of them arrived at a secluded training ground. The air was still and thick with morning dew, the forest casting long shadows. Tsunade cracked her knuckles. "All right, brats, come at me. Show me you're not a couple of weaklings." Mikoto and Shin exchanged a glance. They didn't need words to understand each other. They moved. Mikoto's Sharingan spun to life, a single tomoe glinting in each eye as she flicked her wrist. A shuriken flashed through the air, and as it spun, she formed a rapid set of seals. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The single projectile multiplied midair, splitting into 5, all hurtling towards Tsunade. Tsunade smirked and stomped down. The ground exploded beneath her foot, a shockwave blasting outward and deflecting the shuriken effortlessly. Shin, however, had already begun his own attack. Fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu. A sphere of roaring flames, as wide as a cart, surged toward her. Tsunade's brow furrowed. The hell? This kid's got firepower on par with a Chunin. Raising her chakra, she clenched her fist and threw a punch. Strength of 100 seals. The fireball shattered on impact, the sheer force sending embers flying and splitting the ground beneath her. But when she lifted her gaze, Shin's Sharingan locked onto hers. Ganjutsu, Binding Crucifix. The world around her warped. The sky and ground bled into a dark, crimson abyss. Large, jagged spikes erupted from the void, stabbing through her limbs, locking her in place. Outside the illusion, Tsunade's body went rigid, her pupils dilating. In an instant, Shin's fingertips pressed lightly against her throat. The Ganjutsu shattered. She gasped, staggering back, her pride taking a harder hit than her body. "Looks like you lost, sensei." Shin's smirk was positively insufferable. Mikoto, standing beside him, covered her mouth as she giggled. Tsunade grit her teeth. "TCH. You little brat. I let that happen." She cracked her knuckles again, her tone dark. "All right. No more playing around." Her foot slammed into the ground. Heavenly foot of pain. The earth erupted, a crater forming beneath her as a wave of raw force blasted outward. Shin's body blurred. His form became almost weightless as he twisted midair, using body flicker to escape the destruction radius. He landed smoothly, lips curving upward. This is good practice. Before his feet were even fully planted, Tsunade was already closing the distance. Chakra-enhanced punch. The air cracked as she swung. Even the motion alone sent a shockwave across the training field. Shin barely managed to evade, feeling the whoosh of displaced hair as the fist narrowly missed his face. The impact cratered the ground where he had just stood, sending chunks of earth flying. 2 shadow clones flickered into existence at his sides. Wind blade. Shaken. One clone swung a chakra-infused blade of wind, slicing through the air, while the other lunged with a finger strike, focusing chakra into a precise point of impact. Tsunade, realizing she couldn't fully dodge, raised her arms to block. The wind blade tore through her sleeve, leaving a thin cut on her forearm. The second strike hit her square inches the stomach, the force spreading through her muscles and sending a sharp jolt through her body. But this time, Tsunade didn't flinch. The vast amount of chakra in her system surged, suppressing the pain instantly. With a single, rapid movement, she backhanded the clone into oblivion. "Not bad," she admitted. "But I'm done holding back." In the blink of an eye, she was on him again, moving faster than before. Her fist connected, and Shin's body disintegrated into nothingness. A log replaced him, splintering under her strength. Substitution jutsu? Tsunade clicked her tongue. Chapter 13, Fight. What made Mikoto Uchiha stop in her tracks was Shin Uchiha, who appeared out of nowhere behind Tsunade. Tsunade was stunned for a brief moment after being pierced through by Shin. She had expected him to dodge or at least put up some resistance. After all, given the level of physical prowess he had demonstrated, there was no way he should have been taken down so easily. But just as that thought crossed her mind, Shin, who had been impaled through the abdomen, disappeared in a puff of white smoke with a resounding bang. A shadow clone? When? Tsunade barely had time to react before she felt the wind shift behind her. Rasengan. Shin formed a Rasengan with one hand and drove it viciously into Tsunade's back. Tear. The spiraling sphere's immense force instantly shredded the fabric on Tsunade's back. But in the very next instant, her body exploded into a chunk of wood. A substitution. The leftover Rasengan energy slammed into the wooden block, instantly reducing it to flying sawdust. Several meters away, Tsunade reappeared, beads of sweat trailing down her forehead as she looked at Shin in shock. If this were a battle against an opponent of equal strength, this kid could have actually killed me. Damn brat, you really go for the kill. I'm done for. Tsunade muttered, finally accepting the reality that a true monster had emerged from the Uchiha clan. From the few techniques Shin had shown so far, she wasn't even sure what else she could possibly teach him. Shin, however, wasn't listening. His gaze was locked onto Tsunade. Because her back had been torn open by his Rasengan and she had used the body replacement jutsu to escape, she had yet to register the full extent of her situation. The tattered remnants of her shirt clung desperately to the front of her body, barely concealing the breathtaking view of her snowy peaks. The rise and fall of her chest with each breath was mesmerizing, forcing Shin to hold his breath instinctively, unwilling to miss a single moment of this spectacle. Are you even listening, kid? Tsunade frowned, noticing his distracted gaze before following it downward. Eh? She let out a startled cry, her cheeks instantly turning as red as the setting sun. Panicking, she tried to cover herself with her arms, but in doing so, she shifted too much, causing the tattered fabric to slip further. A second later, the remaining shreds fell uselessly to the ground. Damn it. Why don't I have a camera right now? Fuck. Shin instinctively reached for his pocket, only to realize, devastatingly, that he didn't have a phone in this world. By the time he looked up again, his moment of frustration was cut short. Because standing right there was Mikoto Uchiha. Smiling. But the ominous glint in her eyes, coupled with the blood-red glow of her 3-Tomui Sharingan, sent a shiver down his spine. Shin-kun. She said sweetly, though her voice held a terrifying weight, could you please turn around? Rather than a request, it was more of a demand. Shin glanced at Tsunade, who was now squatting down in an attempt to shield her exposed body, and knew there was only one right answer. Why yeah. Of course. Like a proper gentleman, and a man who valued his life, Shin swiftly turned his back. Only then did Tsunade breathe a sigh of relief. If this had been before, she might not have been so self-conscious. But after spending the last couple of days with Shin, she had subconsciously started seeing him as her peer. Mikoto immediately stepped in, her anger momentarily set aside due to the situation. Without hesitation, she removed her outer coat and draped it over Tsunade's shoulders. Here, Tsunade-sama. Quickly, put this on. Thank you, Mikoto. Tsunade exhaled, standing up with a lingering flush on her cheeks. Her embarrassment still hadn't fully faded. Mikoto, despite being a woman herself, couldn't help but admire the legendary Sanin's beauty. But as her gaze drifted downward, she subconsciously glanced at her own chest. When the hell will mine grow to that level? She thought bitterly. The sheer scale of it. Her brief moment of comparison was cut short when she noticed Shin glancing in their direction, chin in hand as if analyzing something important. Mikoto's coat only barely covered the front, forcing Tsunade to hold on to it awkwardly. Realizing Shin's gaze was still lingering, Tsunade immediately ducked her head, trying to shield herself as much as possible. A mix of mature womanly charm and shy girl-like innocence combined in that moment, making the scene even more dangerous. Shin swallowed. This wasn't something he could handle so early in the morning. Damn brat. Tsunade finally snapped. Stop looking at me. Her voice wavered, as if she wasn't entirely sure whether she wanted to be seen or not. Shin-kun. Mikoto's voice came from beside him, her tone sending alarm bells ringing in his head. Ahem. Shin cleared his throat and waved a hand dismissively. I just thought I could help, you know. I've got an extra set of clothes here. Reaching into his space-sealing scroll, he retrieved a loose coat and offered it forward, successfully diverting attention away from himself. Tsunade momentarily forgot her embarrassment, instead focusing on why Shin conveniently had a coat that was a perfect fit for her. But she wasn't about to complain. Just as she grabbed it, however, Shin suddenly caught her wrist, halting her movement. I'll heal your wounds first. Then you can put on your clothes. His tone was unusually firm, leaving Tsunade momentarily stunned. Fine. A soft green glow enveloped Shin's hands as he placed them gently against Tsunade's bare back. The sensation of his hands, firm, warm, and unexpectedly gentle, sent a shiver up her spine. Tsunade's ears burned red. Her heart pounded wildly, her mind turning blank. She felt utterly frozen, unable to move. The medical ninjutsu didn't take long. After all, Mikoto was watching, and Shin wasn't about to push his luck. Once he finished healing the cuts on her back and wrists, he immediately withdrew his hands and turned away like a proper gentleman. Tsunade remained frozen in place, staring blankly ahead, her entire body feeling hot. Tsunade-sama. Mikoto said softly. Shin-kun is done. Ah. Oh. Jolted back to reality, Tsunade quickly grabbed the coat and slipped it on. She frowned. The fit was oddly perfect. But now wasn't the time to ask. Instead, she exhaled deeply and faced Shin. You passed. She said, gritting her teeth. Obviously. It was no longer an assessment. It had turned into a one-sided beatdown. And to top it all off, she had been humiliated in a way she would never live down. In the future, in front of Shin and Mikoto, she wasn't sure she'd ever be able to hold her head up high again. How the hell do you have so much combat experience? She demanded. And what the fuck are those weird techniques? Tsunade reached out and viciously ruffled Shin's hair, venting her frustration. Unfortunately for her, Shin didn't seem bothered in the slightest. If anything, he looked like he was enjoying it. Chapter 14, Denzo facing the childish Tsunade. Shin Uchiha chose to bear it. He shrugged helplessly and said, I've been practicing using my shadow clones to spar against myself recently. As for those moves, I figured them out on my own. Why can you say it so casually, bastard? Tsunade suddenly realized that her previous understanding of Shin Uchiha had been completely wrong. This guy isn't just a genius in medical ninjutsu. He's capable of creating entirely new taijutsu and ninjutsu at such a young age. His future potential is immeasurable. In addition to feeling somewhat embarrassed, Tsunade also felt a strange sense of pride. I think you should change how you address me, right? Tsunade perked up and smiled at Shin Uchiha expectantly. Even Mikoto Uchiha suddenly felt that Tsunade was acting a little shameless now. Shin Uchiha, however, was speechless that Tsunade was still stuck on this topic. He had no real desire to argue about it. What's the point of calling her sensei? Wouldn't it be far more amusing to rebel against the sensei instead? Alright then, Tsunade-sensei. How does that sound? Do you like it? Shin Uchiha looked at Tsunade teasingly. Seeing him say it so easily, Tsunade deflated like a punctured ball. The pride she had felt just a moment ago vanished in an instant. Her punch had landed on nothing but air, and now she was just left frustrated. Mikoto Uchiha, who was watching from the side, laughed softly before adding, Tsunade-sensei, do you like how I'm calling you that too? Watching the two of them team up against her, Tsunade was even more irritated but completely helpless. Shin Uchiha had no intention of continuing to bully Tsunade. Since she was his teacher now, he fully intended to make the best use of her. My dear sensei, I have some questions for you. Tsunade suddenly felt that being Shin Uchiha's sensei was not going to be easy. You saw me naked just a few minutes ago, and now you're suddenly coming to ask for guidance like nothing happened. Can't you give me a break? Fine, just ask. But don't ask anything weird. If you want to learn my super strength, I can teach you. Tsunade quickly regained her composure, patting her chest confidently. She had never officially taken on a student before, but she figured she would make a good teacher. Shin Uchiha blinked, momentarily distracted by the way her assets bounced. He quickly forced himself to focus again. That's the problem with being around Tsunade, staying mentally focused was an ongoing challenge. I wanted to ask about chakra nature transformation. Oh? You're already starting to look into that? Tsunade studied Shin Uchiha with a complicated expression before sighing. At least he's asking a serious question. Normally, it takes years for a shinobi to properly learn chakra nature transformation. But for someone like you, it should be easier. The first stage is learning to continuously and stably infuse your chakra with its elemental properties. The second stage is about increasing the volume of chakra infused with that nature in an instant. The third stage, which is the hardest, is integrating nature transformation into jutsu. The jutsu we use today were all created by shinobi before us using nature transformations like this. By the way, what was that technique you used earlier? Tsunade's voice lowered at the end, sounding somewhat cautious. Rasengan. Seeing her hesitation, Shin Uchiha decided to clarify. Tsunade's eyes widened slightly before she continued. The Rasengan you used earlier is purely chakra manipulation without any nature transformation. If you manage to apply an elemental transformation to it, you could create an entirely new jutsu. At this point, Tsunade couldn't help but be surprised by Shin Uchiha's creativity. When she was his age, she hadn't even learned many jutsu, let alone created one. But here he was, developing an entirely new technique from scratch. The Rasengan was incredibly unique. It didn't require hand seals to shape chakra, yet it was highly destructive. Having personally experienced its power, Tsunade had no doubt that it would rank as an A-rank jutsu. Shaking her head, she pushed those thoughts aside and led both Shin Uchiha and Mikoto back to Hidden Leaf Village. To train chakra nature transformation, they would need specific materials. Meanwhile, Mikoto Uchiha needed to continue her training in medical ninjutsu. She had just awakened her 3 Tomoe Sharingan all at once, so she needed time to fully adapt to it. Once Uchiha awakened their Sharingan, the more Tomoe they had, the greater their potential. With the 3 Tomoe Sharingan already unlocked, Mikoto's future as a Jonin was practically guaranteed. Mikoto Uchiha couldn't wait to tell her grandfather the news. Shin Uchiha was even considering celebrating the occasion. But it was also proof of just how deeply Mikoto cared for him. If he hadn't transformed back from the kunai just now, he had a feeling Mikoto might have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan in an instant. The Uchiha are known for their extreme emotions. Could Mikoto end up becoming a yindeer? Shin Uchiha cautiously glanced at Mikoto beside him. Mikoto, who had been watching him all along, immediately flashed him a sweet smile. For some reason, that smile sent a chill down Shin Uchiha's spine. Thinking back to the Uchihas in his memory, it was hard to find even one who wasn't emotionally extreme. And Obito Uchiha. That guy went completely off the deep end. Mikoto, meanwhile, definitely had the potential for something similar. Maybe in the future, should he fake his death for a while to push Mikoto toward awakening the Mangekyo. As time passed, Shin Uchiha continued training his chakra nature transformation with Tsunade, though his mind kept drifting back to that thought from time to time. Meanwhile, news of the situation in Hidden Eddy Village had begun spreading throughout Hidden Leaf Village. Sarutobe Hiruzen stood by the window in his office, pipe in hand, silently watching the abandoned Senju compound in the village. It looks like he's finally getting desperate. Guess he's sending someone to clean up the mess. Muttering to himself, Hiruzen called for Denzo. Is Root ready? We've already entered Hidden Eddy Village's territory. Denzo's voice was cold and emotionless. Hidden Clouds Village, Hidden Sand Village, and Hidden Stones Village have all sent their forces. Once the battle reaches its peak, Root will step in and provoke the other villages into further action. And when the time is right, we'll select a suitable Uzumaki survivor. Denzo's gaze darkened as he spoke. He had invested a great deal of effort into this operation. Meanwhile, Sarutobe Hiruzen, acting as though he wanted no part in it, was leaving all the dirty work to him, only to issue orders as if he bore no responsibility. Denzo's dissatisfaction with Hiruzen deepened, as did his hunger for the Hokage position. Hiruzen, seeing his expression, didn't drag the conversation on any longer. Without hesitation, he gave the order to issue an S-rank mission. Chapter 15, Hiruzen Hypocrisy. Due to the urgency of the situation, Hidden Leaf Village is powerless, and everything hinges on which shinobi step forward to take action. Sarutobe Hiruzen gazed out the window with a calm expression, as though he were discussing something utterly mundane. Denzo, standing behind him, felt a chill run down his spine. Most of the Geinin and Chunin had already been deployed to the front lines. This meant that the shinobi remaining in Hidden Leaf Village were undoubtedly the elites, waiting for further orders. Hiruzen's plan was clear: force the Senju clan to deplete their own forces. The shinobi willing to take on a mission as dangerous as rescuing the Uzumaki were bound to have deep ties to Uzumaki Mido. And those shinobi were, without a doubt, the remaining elites of the Senju clan. In this situation, where all major forces wanted to erase the Uzumaki, even if the Senju sent their best, without Hidden Leaf Village's backing, they would be walking into a death trap. No need for Hidden Leaf Village to lift a finger, other villages would handle the bloodshed. Denzo clenched his fists. For all his talk of underhanded tactics, assassination, and subterfuge, it was Hiruzen who played the game best. Not only did he operate in plain sight, but he was far crueler than Denzo himself. At the Senju compound, Tsunade sat in silence for a long time. The news of Hidden Leaf Village issuing the rescue mission had reached her, and now she was just staring at the message, lost in thought. Grandma. Shin was right. That old man dragged this out on purpose. When Tsunade had been training with Shin Uchiha, he had casually pointed out a few things about the situation with the Uzumaki. She hadn't believed him then. After all, her understanding of the third Hokage told her he wasn't that kind of person. But now, she had no choice but to accept the truth. Uzumaki Mido, watching her granddaughter's reaction, reached out and flicked her forehead with a sigh. I told you before, don't underestimate him. That boy sees things more clearly than you do. Grandma. You never told me anything about this. How was I supposed to know? Tsunade covered her forehead, pouting in frustration. Mido merely raised an eyebrow. Then why do you think I could see it? Tsunade had no response to that. Instead, she shifted the topic. Grandma, I'm taking the mission. I have to go. Mido's gaze softened. Move cautiously. Take Dama, Hayato, and the others with you. There's no avoiding this now. A heavy pause. But when the time comes, put your life first. The weight of the statement wasn't lost on Tsunade. Mido knew this mission could mean death for many, including her. But the Uzumaki were her people, and she couldn't just watch them be slaughtered. The Senju and Uzumaki had always stood together. If one suffered, the other had a duty to help. The real problem was Hiruzen. They had little time. Tsunade clenched her fists. I'll do everything I can. Meanwhile, Shin Uchiha halted the forming of a wind-style-infused Rasengan in his palm upon hearing the news. Though barely a week had passed, he had already made significant progress in elemental chakra manipulation. He hadn't stopped hunting wild beasts either, using his rebirth ritual to absorb their chakra and life force. In terms of sheer chakra reserves, he had already reached Chunin level. Physically, he could headbutt an average Chunin into unconsciousness. A smirk formed on his lips. Even without my Mangekyo Sharingan, I can take on a Jonin. If they underestimate me, like Tsunoda did before, I can kill them outright. That was enough to convince him. He was going to follow Tsunoda's team to the land of whirlpools. If his guess was right, Uzumaki Kashina was being brought to Hidden Leaf Village around this time. If luck was on his side, he could make contact with her early. Given that she was the future Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, forming a connection could only be beneficial. But he had another objective. The bodies of the shinobi who would die in the coming battle. A full-scale war meant corpses everywhere. So far, I haven't absorbed the chakra or life force of a shinobi yet. His pulse quickened at the thought. Wild animals weren't enough. He needed something more potent. Sneaking out was easy. The Uchiha police force was a convenient tool. His status within the clan let him bypass the usual security measures without issue. Packing 2 storage scrolls, making sure to inform Mikoto, and double-checking his equipment, Shin set off. He trailed behind Tsunoda's team, keeping his distance so as not to be detected. By the time he arrived in the land of whirlpools, the battle had already begun. Various forces were closing in from different directions, besieging the Uzumaki village. Relying on their powerful barriers and terrain, the Uzumaki were fighting fiercely. Shin surveyed the battlefield, murmuring, Hidden Clouds Village, Hidden Stones Village, Hidden Mist Village. Even Hidden Sand Villages involved. Everything that could go wrong, did. He had expected conflict, but this was worse than anticipated. Though the enemy shinobi had removed their forehead protectors, he could recognize their techniques and battle formations. Then, there's someone here. A Hidden Mist Village sensor nin suddenly turned in his direction. In an instant, 5 elite chunin rushed toward him. Hidden Mist Jutsu. A dense fog spread instantly, obscuring everything. But for Shin, it was pointless. With his Mangekyo Sharingan, he could see perfectly. Calmly, he slipped 5 kunai from his pouch, each one wrapped with an explosive tag, and threw them. The Hidden Mist Village shinobi sneered, seeing his aim go wide. Ha! What a damn amateur, magnet-style, magnetic guidance. With a flick of his wrist, the kunai veered midair, stabbing straight into their throats. Shock flickered across their faces. Before they could react, detonate. Boom. 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 5 headless corpses hit the ground. Blood painted the battlefield, soaking into the earth. Shin stared down at the scene, unfazed. Not much different from killing beasts, really. Was it just his tolerance for violence? Or had he always been this bloodthirsty? It didn't matter. The mist still hung thick in the air. Without hesitation, he moved to the bodies, pressing his palms against their still warm flesh. The remaining chakra and life force of the Hidden Mist Village shinobi rapidly drained away, absorbed into his body. Time was short. He had to feast before the battlefield claimed its next victims. Chapter 16, Battlefield, 1, Soul, Sacrifice. Shin Uchiha performed the same technique, engulfing the bodies of the 5 Hidden Mist Village chunin in black flames, reducing them to ashes. The dark fire carried their chakra and vitality, surging into his body like a tide. My body. It feels stronger. The chakra I used has not only replenished but increased significantly. A rush of exhilaration filled Shin as he felt the subtle yet undeniable changes within himself. His senses sharpened, his muscles felt denser, and his chakra reserves swelled beyond their previous limits. Since he had already mastered chakra nature transformation, he could clearly perceive the properties of his own chakra. And now, after absorbing the chakra of these mist nin, he noticed something unexpected. His chakra affinity had gained an additional element. Water style. I actually acquired a new chakra nature? Shin muttered, his Sharingan spinning in fascination. This was beyond what he had anticipated. Grinning, he rifled through the remains of the slain Hidden Mist Village nin, swiping everything of value, kunai, shuriken, explosive tags, ration pills, before vanishing into the nearby forest. His supplies had doubled after looting both sides of the battlefield. Looking back at the flames raging through the wreckage, his eyes gleamed with greed and excitement. Right now, every ninja on this battlefield is an experience point waiting to be claimed. The battlefield was already a chaotic mess, what was a little more carnage? A sadistic smile curled across Shin's lips as he extended his palm. Chakra swirled rapidly in his grasp, forming a Rasengan, crackling with electrical energy. Lightning style, Rasengan. With a flick of his wrist, the spiraling sphere shot forward. Unlike a normal Rasengan, this one shimmered and distorted the air, making it almost invisible to the naked eye. A Hidden Sand Village chunin, preoccupied with attacking the Uzumaki clan's barrier, suddenly sensed something off, but before he could react, the Rasengan struck him square inches the temple. Bang! The impact was like a high-caliber rifle round going off, bursting through the Hidden Sand Village nin's skull. Brain matter and shards of bone splattered across his comrades, who recoiled in horror. Ah! One of them barely had time to scream before another explosion tore through his chest, leaving a gaping hole. Blood spurted violently as his body collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. In mere moments, nearly 10 hidden Sand Village Chunin lay lifeless, their corpses littering the battlefield. Only an elite Jonin managed to retreat, dragging a few survivors with him. Hidden in the shadows, Shin Uchiha motioned for his shadow clones to retrieve the bodies. His face split into a wide, wicked grin. Hiding and sniping from the dark like this. It's almost too fun. With his stolen chakra replenishing his reserves, he didn't hesitate to create more clones, bombarding the battlefield with multiple lightning-style Rasengan. Despite the continuous assault, his chakra levels remained stable, thanks to the energy absorbed from his fallen enemies. Then, something new surfaced in his mind. Wind-style, vacuum sphere, a B-rank jutsu that launched compressed wind bullets upon exhaling, similar to the Phoenix Fire jutsu, but with slicing force instead of flames. I can steal jutsu, too? Now this is a pleasant surprise. He instinctively knew how to perform the technique, as if he had practiced it for years. Testing it would have to wait, new prey had arrived. I sense chakra fluctuations over here. It must be an escaped Uzumaki. After them. A squad of Hidden Stones village nin rushed toward his position. With his disguise, a darker complexion and slight changes to his features, they immediately assumed he was a Hidden Clouds village nin. Since the hidden villages had agreed not to attack each other during the siege, the Hidden Stones village nin hesitated. The leading Jonin stepped forward, narrowing his eyes at Shin. If he's an Uzumaki in disguise, we kill him. If he's really from Hidden Clouds village, we back off. Before they could confirm either way, Shin acted. Magnet style, nail hell. In an instant, several iron nails hidden beneath the dirt shot upward, hurtling toward the Hidden Stones village team with deadly precision. The Jonin reacted instantly, deflecting the first nail with his kunai, only to realize, too late, that the nails were wrapped in explosive tags. Boom. 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 The detonations tore through the squad, leaving only the elite Jonin standing amidst his injured comrades. It's an enemy. Kill him. The surviving Hidden Stones village nin quickly formed hand seals. Earth-style, rock pillar prison. Massive stone pillars erupted from the ground, encasing Shin in an inescapable cage. The Jonin followed up instantly. Earth-style, rock spear barrage. Jagged stone lances burst from the ground, aiming to skewer Shin alive like a pincushion. Lightning-style, iron body. An aura of crackling lightning surged around Shin as his muscles hardened, his skin becoming as unyielding as tempered steel. The stone spears shattered upon impact, leaving him completely unscathed. He smirked. That all you got? Damn those Hidden Clouds village nin. I knew they were up to something. The Hidden Stones village Jonin snarled, mistaking Shin for a cloud nin due to his lightning style. The moment he prepared for a counterattack, his body suddenly stiffened. What the? I can't move? My body. It's numb. The remaining Chunin screamed in panic, realizing their limbs refused to obey them. Shin chuckled darkly, stepping forward from the crumbling rock prison. Ah, that paralysis toxin works wonders. Not just the nails, but every weapon he carried was coated in fast-acting nerve poison. Even the slightest scratch meant total immobilization. Wait. Let's talk. The Jonin tried to bargain, his voice laced with desperation. Shin merely grinned, raising his hand to form another Rasengan, this time infused with wind style. Sorry, but talking won't increase my experience points. The wind-imbued sphere roared in his palm before he slammed it into the Jonin's chest, shredding him apart in a burst of blood and entrails. As the remaining Hidden Stones village nin fell to the ground, paralyzed and helpless, Shin's grin widened. Now, let's see what new abilities you guys have for me. The battlefield burned behind him, screams and explosions filling the air. And amidst the chaos, Shin Uchiha continued his rampage, growing stronger with every life he claimed. Chapter 17, Battlefield 2, Lightning Style, Chidori. Shin Uchiha had no intention of wasting time with idle chatter. His right hand clenched as a violent, high-intensity electric current crackled to life, forming the signature piercing weapon. This technique demanded mastery over both chakra nature transformation and shape transformation, something that had taken him considerable effort to perfect. ZT. 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 The battlefield was drowned in the ear-piercing screech of 1,000 birds as arcs of lightning erupted from his palm. Before anyone could react to the deafening noise, Shin vanished, his form consumed by the crackling energy. In a split second, his right hand plunged through the chest of an Hidden Stones village Jonin, shattering the man's heart in a single, decisive strike. The lightning chakra cloak combined with Chidori's speed boost. If I didn't have the Mangekyo Sharingan, I wouldn't have been able to follow that movement. Shin muttered to himself, his Sharingan spinning as he observed the aftermath of his strike. The speed of the thrust was beyond human reaction time. Without the precognition granted by the Sharingan, it would have been impossible to follow, let alone counter. But the result was undeniable, instantaneous death. Even without a paralytic agent coating his blade, the sheer force of his attack had been more than enough. Run. Even with his heart obliterated, the dying Jonin's last act was to clutch at Shin's wrist in a desperate attempt to trap him. The Hidden Stones village Chunin behind him, wide-eyed with terror, shed tears of fear and anguish before turning to flee. Soul, sacrifice. The retreating Hidden Stones village shinobi failed to notice the faint glow in Shin's Mangekyo Sharingan as his technique activated. The Jonin's body blackened in an instant, crumbling into dust as his remaining life force was drained away. A surge of vitality and chakra flooded into Shin, replenishing the energy he had expended. He didn't bother pursuing the fleeing Chunin. Instead, his gaze shifted to the Hidden Stones village ninja paralyzed by his earlier attacks, their bodies immobilized by a potent poison. With a single gesture, he drained them dry. The influx of chakra and life energy strengthened his body further. He could feel it. The total amount of chakra he wielded now placed him at the upper echelon of Chunin. His physical strength had increased by at least a third, and even the slight blurriness in his left eye had begun to fade. He also sensed something new. Earth style. Absorbing the essence of his victims had granted him an additional chakra nature. His smirk widened. So excess vitality replenishes my lost ocular power. If I keep this up until the end of the war in the land of whirlpools, I might fully restore my sight. A chilling excitement settled in his chest. Kill. 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 The battlefield was a feeding ground. His prey scattered before him, and their strength was his for the taking. Even techniques weren't beyond his reach. Though he didn't automatically gain knowledge of jutsu from those he drained, his Mangekyo Sharingan had recorded every movement they had made. A few minutes of practice, and he would be able to replicate them flawlessly. For the next several days, Shin Uchiha became a ghost haunting the battlefield. He attacked indiscriminately, cutting down anyone who crossed his path, adapting his style for maximum psychological warfare. Against Hidden Stones village shinobi, he used lightning style. Against Hidden Mist village shinobi, he wielded wind style. Against Hidden Clouds village shinobi, he countered with earth style. With every battle, the chaos deepened. Distrust spread like wildfire. Now, when shinobi of different villages encountered each other, their first instinct was to attack without question. You cowardly Hidden Stones village bastards, only attacking from behind. What gives you the right to talk, Hidden Clouds village scum? You two animals think we won't retaliate. What did Hidden Mist village ever do to you? I should be the one asking that. 3 times today, San Shinobi have attacked us unprovoked. Bit by bit, reason gave way to blind rage. The alliances crumbled. What had once been a unified assault on the Uzumaki clan turned into a brutal free-for-all. Meanwhile, within Hidden Eddy village, the leaders of the besieged village took notice. Why are they fighting amongst themselves? For weeks, the Uzumaki clan had been on the verge of annihilation, struggling against the combined forces of multiple hidden villages. They had been moments away from complete collapse. And yet now, their enemies were at each other's throats. Tsunade, did you send someone to make them fight among themselves? Uzumaki Rashimi, one of the remaining clan elders, turned toward the Senju Kunoichi in confusion. She had brought reinforcements, but they had never discussed sabotage of this scale. Tsunade shook her head, equally puzzled. No. This wasn't us. On the battlefield, Shin Uchiha casually looted the corpses around him, muttering under his breath, no need to thank me. Back in the village, Uzumaki Ashizui, the clan chief, turned to his advisors with grim determination. The barrier protecting the village won't last much longer. We have no hope of receiving aid from Hidden Leaf village. Our only option is to ensure that at least some of our clan survives. Tsunade's expression darkened. The truth had become painfully clear since her arrival. The Uzumaki clan had sent a call for aid to Hidden Leaf village long ago. And Hidden Leaf village had ignored them. The realization weighed heavily on her. The Hokage she had once respected, Sarutobe Hiruzen, was not the man she had believed him to be. But there was no time for regrets. The Uzumaki had already made their decision. The young ones have been sent away through the village's hidden passages. An elder reported. We don't know how many will survive, but we must buy them time. Their mission was clear, those who remained would fight to the last man, drawing enemy attention to ensure the next generation had a chance to escape. Tsunade clenched her fists. She wished she could escort the evacuees personally, but it would be pointless. If she and the Senju forces abandoned the front lines, the enemy would simply wipe out everyone at once. We'll stay and fight, she declared. Rashimi hesitated, but he could see it in their faces. None of the Senju shinobi had any intention of running. He gave a reluctant nod. They had accepted their fates. As the defenders prepared for their final stand, the chaos outside finally subsided, and a chilling realization dawned upon the enemy forces. The Uzumaki clan is trying to escape. They must not be allowed to live. Hatred filled their hearts. The Uzumaki's sealing jutsu was too dangerous to leave unchecked. Their enemies knew, if even a handful of survivors escaped, retribution would come. And so, they resolved to ensure there would be no survivors. The final battle for Hidden Ecchi Village had begun. Chapter 18, Battlefield 3. The temporarily allied shinobi immediately pursued the direction in which Tsunade and the remaining Uzumaki clan members had fled. Shin Uchiha followed closely behind, stepping into the ruins of the once thriving Uzumaki village. His crimson eyes scanned the bloodied corpses littering the ground. He sighed, an unusual softness in his voice. I doubt anyone will come to collect your bodies. So let me take care of them. For the first time, Shin Uchiha didn't reach out to touch the fallen. Instead, he stood still, his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning ominously. As his gaze swept across the remains, a flicker of black flame ignited in his pupils. This was a new application of soul sacrifice, a technique he had refined after repeated use. Using soul sacrifice through direct contact consumed no ocular power. However, this external method of absorption, his dujutsu. It's similar to Amaterasu, yet distinct. Unlike Amaterasu, which burns indefinitely until its target is destroyed, his flames are controlled by his chakra reserves. The black flames devoured the corpses, fueling his vitality at the cost of his ocular energy. Large-scale use placed an immense strain on his body. But burning them one by one was too inefficient. As the black flames dissipated, surging chakra and life force flooded into his body, replenishing what he had just expended. More than that, Shin Uchiha could feel the Uzumaki chakra and vitality actively transforming him. More than 130 trillion cells in his body were undergoing a radical metamorphosis. Moments later, he became acutely aware of the sheer volume of excess vitality coursing through him. To test it, he ran a kunai across his arm. A deep gash formed, crimson blood welling up, only to close within seconds. I've acquired the Uzumaki clan's enhanced life force. A variation of their so-called sage body. He clenched his fist, feeling the raw power surging within. However, he wasn't naive enough to assume he had awakened yang release. If I were to absorb chakra from Senju Shinobi. No, that won't work. Only Senju Hashirama possessed that level of innate power. Senju Hashirama, the reincarnation of Azura's chakra. Ordinary Senju didn't even inherit wood style, much less his divine vitality. And even those who could wield wood style paled in comparison to Hashirama. If I wish to manifest wood style, do I need Hashirama's chakra itself? Shin suppressed his growing ambitions and instead focused inward. The transformation of his physique had elevated his chakra reserves to the level of a seasoned jonin. If I refine it properly, reaching Kage level within a year is not impossible. Most importantly, the Uzumaki life force was mitigating the cost of his Mangekyo Sharingan. This meant he could now utilize soul sacrifice and his ocular powers far more frequently. I left 5 shadow clones hidden throughout Hidden Ecchi Village's ruins. I should assist the Uzumaki clan first. Despite harvesting so many fallen Uzumaki, Shin Uchiha still felt compelled to aid them, if only because of his past ties with Tsunade. Yet, the moment he moved, he abruptly stopped. Dozens of kunai and shuriken tore through the air toward him from the shadows. Shin Uchiha's Mangekyo spun once. The incoming projectiles froze in midair, then reversed course, shooting back toward their wielders. Bang! 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 The kunai and shuriken clattered to the ground, their wielders narrowly dodging. Emerging from the darkness were 5 masked shinobi. 1 elite jonin and 4 chunin. Silent, disciplined, and lethal. Root operatives. Denzo had dispatched multiple teams to the land of whirlpools, tasked with securing useful materials. They had not expected to find an Uchiha desecrating the battlefield, harvesting corpses for his own gain. Though uncertain of what he was doing, their orders remained unchanged: capture him. Denzo had explicitly instructed them to retrieve an Uzumaki orphan and any valuable assets. The lone Uchiha before them met the criteria. Lightning style, lightning shadow clone jutsu. Shin Uchiha didn't recognize their affiliation, but he knew a fight was inevitable. His newfound vitality was still settling, but his chakra reserves were rising rapidly. In a flash, he summoned 5 shadow clones. The clones launched a synchronized counterattack the instant they materialized. Earth style, swamp of the underworld. The root jonin swiftly weaved hand signs, slamming his palms onto the ground. The earth beneath Shin liquefied, morphing into a vast, sinking mire. The moment his movements were hindered, The Jonin formed another set of seals. Wind style, vacuum wave. Dozens of razor-sharp wind blades shot forward, spiraling toward Shin. Lightning style armor, iron fortress. Shin's blood surged, accelerating his body's electrical impulses. Lightning flickered across his form, reinforcing his muscles and skin. The spinning wind blade struck, but failed to cut through his flesh. His clothes were shredded, scattering in the wind, revealing battle-hardened muscles gleaming with chakra-infused durability. A hidden cloud technique? The Root Jonin's brows furrowed in surprise. He had assumed they were dealing with Hidden Leaf Village remnants. Hidden Cloud's lightning-based taijutsu was a different threat altogether. Understanding the sheer power behind lightning-style armor, the Jonin swiftly leaped back to create distance. But the moment he landed, he felt something tightening around his ankles. His gaze flicked downward, dark, glistening iron sand. Magnet-style, iron sand bind. Shin muttered. At the same time, his clones were eliminated by the Root Jonin, vanishing in puffs of smoke. But instead of disappearing entirely, the destroyed clones transformed into crackling bolts of lightning. Bang! ZZT! The electricity surged into the bodies of the Root Jonin, paralyzing them momentarily. Magnet-style, iron sand death spear. With a flick of his wrist, Shin compressed the swirling iron sand into a massive spear and launched it forward. The immobilized Jonin barely had time to react before the weapon skewered them to the ground. Earth-style wall. The Root Jonin hastily formed a defensive barrier to block the next strike. Yet, his trapped legs left him vulnerable. The iron sand constricting his lower limbs began burrowing into his flesh. Realizing the inevitable, the Jonin didn't hesitate. With wind-style chakra coating his hand, he severed his own legs in a single, clean motion. Splat! Blood erupted from the wounds, staining the battlefield. From a distance, Shin Uchiha involuntarily tensed, phantom pain creeping through his own limbs. Yet, the Root Jonin didn't falter. Expressionless, unwavering, his hands immediately moved to form new seals. Chapter 19, Battlefield 4, Illusion, Tree Binding Death. The Root Jonin formed a rapid sequence of hand seals and immediately cast a Ganjutsu on Shin Uchiha. For a split second, Shin's vision blurred, and in that moment, massive tree roots burst from the ground, twisting around him like serpents and constricting his movements. The Root Jonin dashed forward recklessly, as if intending to sacrifice himself to take Shin down with him. What a waste of an illusion against me. Ganjutsu of that level doesn't work on me against these eyes, no Ganjutsu will ever work. Shin's Mangekyo Sharingan flared to life, effortlessly reflecting the Ganjutsu back at its caster. The Root Jonin froze in place, his mind ensnared in his own illusion. Without hesitation, Shin flicked his wrist and sent a kunai whistling through the air, piercing straight through the man's heart. As he lay dying, his eyes remained locked onto Shin's crimson pupils. With his last breath, he gasped in disbelief, that Sharingan. You are. Before he could finish, Shin ignited his corpse with black flames, erasing all traces. The consuming flames spread, devouring the other fallen Root operatives, and the chakra they left behind was absorbed, restoring Shin's own reserves. Glancing at the discarded masks scattered around him, Shin narrowed his eyes, already piecing together the identity of these men. Their masks. Not quite like the Anbu's. More intricate, more distinct. The ninja from other villages are preoccupied hunting down the Uzumaki. That must mean these bastards are from Root. His voice was low, his expression unreadable. As Uchiha, one unavoidable obstacle stood in his path, Denzo Shimura. If he had the power, the first name on his list would be that old bastard. Always lurking in the shadows, orchestrating schemes, playing the most despicable roles in Hidden Leaf Village's darkest moments. If his suspicions were correct, then Root was heavily involved in the downfall of the Uzumaki clan. Shin shook his head, brushing the thought aside. No point dwelling on it now. The corpses had been erased, and his soul sacrifice ensured there would be no traceable evidence left behind. Root wouldn't be able to track him so easily. With that, he shifted his focus and sprinted toward the direction of the Uzumaki clan's retreat. When Shin caught up to Tsunade and the retreating Uzumaki, he was surprised to see that their situation was far better than he had expected. It seemed that his actions had already begun to shift history's course. The Uzumaki had suffered fewer casualties than anticipated, thanks to Tsunade and her elite squadron. Behind her, several Senju Jonin stood firm, their hands flashing through a sequence of seals. Earth-style, Earthflow River. The terrain beneath the enemy shinobi suddenly liquefied into a swirling mire, swallowing them into its depths. A massive tidal wave of mud surged forward, slamming into the pursuers with crushing force. The scattered ninja team struggled to find footing, some caught off guard by the sudden shift. That was when the Uzumaki struck back. Adamantine ceiling chains. Dozens of golden chakra chains burst forth from the backs of the remaining Uzumaki warriors, binding the lead enemy shinobi instantly. Trapped in both the sinking mud and the relentless sealing technique, their ability to pursue was swiftly neutralized. Summoning, Slug Division. Tsunoda's voice rang out as she summoned Katsu, the massive slug immediately fragmenting into hundreds of smaller forms that latched onto each wounded ally. Through their division, Katsu channeled Tsunoda's chakra into every injured ninja, activating her mystic palm jutsu. Since their retreat began, fewer than 10 Uzumaki had fallen, an incredible feat, with over 80% of the credit belonging to Tsunoda's unparalleled medical skills. Their strategy was clear. Fight. Retreat. Recover. Maintain their strength. Meanwhile, the pursuing ninja coalition, an uneasy alliance of various factions, had suffered from Shin's earlier interference. Their already fragile trust had cracked, with groups eyeing each other with suspicion rather than cooperation. And then, Shin saw an opportunity. He wasn't about to waste it. Magnet-style, iron sand scattershot. Shin raised his hand, and in an instant, thousands of iron sand particles shot forward like a hailstorm of bullets. Splurt. 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 The pursuers never saw it coming. The iron sand projectiles tore through flesh and bone, embedding themselves into their bodies. Some collapsed immediately, screaming as the magnetic iron surged deeper, slicing into their organs like unseen blades. Soul sacrifice. Without mercy, Shin unleashed black flames once more. The dying ninja were engulfed in the abyssal fire, reduced to nothing but smoldering ash. Enemy attack. We're under attack from behind. The survivors screamed in panic, their cries alerting the rest of their forces. When the leading ninja turned back, their blood ran cold at the sight of their comrades incinerated by inextinguishable black flames. Black flames. No. It can't be. Is that Amaterasu? Is this Hidden Leaf Village's backup? A sense of dread settled over them. Every elite jonin who had survived the first great ninja war remembered one thing clearly, the nightmare of facing the Uchiha in battle. The inextinguishable black flames of Amaterasu had left an unforgettable horror in their minds. Now, history was repeating itself. The Uzumaki and Tsunoda also turned, catching sight of the masked figure standing amid the chaos, his blood-red Sharingan glowing ominously. The entire battlefield fell into a hushed confusion. Why was an Uchiha helping the Uzumaki? Tsunoda's thoughts raced. The number of known Mangekyo Sharingan users in the Uchiha clan could be counted on one hand. No matter how she looked at it, this masked shinobi should have had no reason to interfere. Meanwhile, Shin basked in the overflowing chakra surging within him, rejuvenated by the destruction he had wrought. Forming hand seals, he inhaled deeply. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Whoosh! A massive fireball, nearly twice the size of an average shinobi, roared from his mouth, streaking across the sky with blistering heat. The ground beneath it blackened, plants withering into nothing but cinders. A simple C-rank jutsu, but with his chakra reserves, it rivaled the destructive power of an A-rank technique unleashed by an elite jonin. Counter it. Now! Desperate cries rang out as the coalition scrambled to mount a defense. Water-style, waterfall jutsu. Several chunin formed seals, spewing forth torrents of water to intercept the incoming inferno. SHH. Boom. Steam erupted violently as fire met water, the explosive clash sending waves of scalding vapor across the battlefield. The unfortunate ninja closest to the collision screamed as their flesh was cooked alive by the sheer heat. Others were hurled backward by the resulting shockwave. Despite the direct counter, the attack had only been partially neutralized. The remaining shinobi hesitated. Fear crawled into their bones. Their pursuit of the Uzumaki wavered. And when the steam finally cleared, Shin Uchiha was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 20, Battlefield 5. Shin Uchiha was not prepared to engage the allied shinobi forces head-on. They had hundreds of shinobi, and if he were surrounded, he would be forced to use Susanoo to fight back. The outcome could very well be a battle to the death, with little to gain from it. Moreover, he did not want to reveal too much of his power. If he became a significant threat, the consequences could be more than he wanted to deal with. While Shin Uchiha hesitated, Tsunoda and the remaining Uzumaki clan members used the opportunity to escape the battlefield. Only when they reached a relatively safe distance did they slow down, catching their breath. Tsunoda remained deep in thought, unable to shake the image of the 8-pointed star Mangekyo Sharingan she had seen earlier. Who is that Uchiha? Why does he look so familiar? Just as she exhaled, preparing to regroup, a sudden presence halted her. A dozen jonin and several dozen chunin materialized in the clearing ahead. Their numbers alone made up nearly half of the combined force that had pursued them earlier. Each one wore a mask, their identities hidden, their intent clear. The air grew tense, every shinobi instinctively preparing for battle. Through the Yamanaka clan operatives embedded en route, Denzo received the information immediately via mind transmission. His expression darkened as he processed the situation. Are the shinobi from the other villages all incompetent? His irritation vanished as he gave his next order: no matter. Eliminate the remaining Uzumaki and Senju. Tsunade is not to be allowed to escape. The Yamanaka agent transmitted the command instantly. The masked root operatives turned their cold, emotionless eyes toward the exhausted Uzumaki survivors. Trained to obey without hesitation, conditioned through brutal psychological reprogramming, and bound by the cursed tongue eradication seal, they were perfect killing machines. Even when faced with the very allies they had once fought beside, they did not falter. Enemy attack. Brace for combat. Someone shouted. The Uzumaki and Senju survivors, despite their exhaustion, pushed themselves to meet the incoming assault. The prolonged battle had drained their chakra reserves and physical stamina. If not for the Senju's natural vitality and the Uzumaki's formidable endurance, they would have collapsed long ago. Tsunade, nearly out of chakra from continuous healing, could do little but watch as the tide of battle shifted against them once again. Having escaped one enemy, they had now fallen into an even deadlier ambush. TCH. This is getting annoying. A voice rang out from behind. Shin Uchiha had arrived. Magnet style, iron sand barrage. With a flick of his wrist, he shaped the metallic sand around him into razor-sharp projectiles, hurling them toward the root operatives with deadly speed. The well-trained root shinobi immediately reacted, some dodging, others raising barriers or counterattacking. Two of them vanished underground. Earth style, hiding like a mole jutsu. From below, they launched a surprise grab for Shin's legs, attempting to immobilize him. At the same time, three root operatives wove hand signs in unison. Fire style, dragon flame jutsu. Three torrents of fire erupted toward Shin, cutting off his retreat. The searing flames obliterated the trees in their path, creating an inferno that threatened to engulf him completely. Before he could react, the Yamanaka clan operatives en route struck with their own secret technique. Mind-body switch jutsu. A formless spiritual force shot toward Shin, attempting to invade his mind and seize control of his body. As the energy invaded his consciousness, Shin found himself inside a vast mental space, a void of pure white. Now you're mine. A smirk crept across Shin's face. A pair of blood-red Mangekyo Sharingan spun to life in the void. Get out of my head. With an explosion of mental energy, he shattered the Yamanaka's intrusion. Back in reality, the root operative who had attempted the possession gasped as his body convulsed. Blood leaked from his eyes, nose, and mouth before he collapsed unconscious. He has a Mangekyo. His final words were barely a whisper before darkness overtook him. But Shin had no time to gloat. His legs were still trapped. The roaring flames were seconds away from reaching him. His Mangekyo spun rapidly. The air trembled as a massive surge of chakra erupted from his body. Golden, ethereal ribs materialized around him in an instant. Boom. The fire struck the skeletal barrier of Susanoo with a deafening impact. The explosion sent a shockwave through the battlefield, yet the flames were utterly negated. Not a single ember passed through. All eyes turned toward him. But it wasn't over. With a flex of his will, Susanoo materialized golden arms, which immediately slammed into the ground. Boom. The earth split apart, revealing the two root operatives who had hidden underground. Realizing their failure, they attempted to drag Shin down with them. But the Susanoo hands moved faster. Snap. The sound was sickening. The two shinobi were reduced to crushed remains in an instant. Only their lifeless arms still clung to Shin's legs. Disgusting. Get it off. Shin willed Susanoo to pry the severed limbs from him, discarding them like filth. His terrifying Mangekyo bore down on the remaining root operatives. The chakra surrounding him grew denser, more oppressive. The golden skeletal form of Susanoo expanded, rising nearly 10 meters high. Now armed with an enormous golden blade, Susanoo raised its weapon and swung downward with earth-shattering force. Panic rippled through the root operatives. Wind style, vacuum sphere. Lightning style, thunder dragon. Water style, water-severing wave. A barrage of high-level ninjutsu shot toward Shin. Yet he stood motionless, allowing the attacks to collide with Susanoo head-on. The resulting explosion should have been enough to obliterate an entire squad of Jonin. But as the smoke cleared, Shin remained untouched. His golden Susanoo stood tall, unshaken. He cracked his neck, his gaze locked onto his enemies. Is that all? A chill ran down the spines of the remaining root shinobi. Tsunade, still struggling to stand, watched in stunned silence. That's Susanoo. His Sharingan. Just who the hell is he? But there was no time for answers. Shin tightened his grip on his blade. Let's end this. Chapter 21, Battlefield, 6, you guys can take my attack too. Shin Uchiha, A grin hidden beneath his mask, commanded his Susanoo to bring down its massive sword. Boom! The ground within a dozen meters erupted from the impact, the sheer force obliterating 7 root operatives in a single strike. Despite witnessing the vast difference in power between them and their opponent, the root operatives did not falter. Instead, they continued their assault against Shin Uchiha without hesitation. They were root. No names. No emotions. No hesitation. Only the mission mattered. Against such mindless obedience, Shin Uchiha simply smirked beneath his mask. He was happy to grant them their deserved end. Death. Chidori Nagashi. With a surge of lightning chakra, Susanoo radiated a burst of electrical energy, sending thousands of volts coursing through the battlefield. A violent surge of electricity paralyzed the root operatives mid-attack, their bodies seizing up instantly. Shin Uchiha, ever opportunistic, did not waste the moment. Susanoo's massive blade swung in a brutal horizontal arc. Swish. The electrified blade cut through flesh and wood alike, root operatives and trees alike split in two as though a scythe had harvested a field of wheat. The aftermath was silent, save for the rustling of a gentle breeze. Bodies and broken tree trunks collapsed simultaneously. In the blink of an eye, the once dense forest surrounding Shin Uchiha was carved into an open field, wide enough to rival a training ground. At a safe distance, the Uzumaki refugees and Tsunade stood frozen, lungs seized as they watched the destruction unfold. Raw, unrestrained power had been displayed before them. Had it not been for the quick reflexes of the senior shinobi among them, who had hastily erected Earth-style defenses, they would have perished in the aftermath. From the moment Shin Uchiha had activated his incomplete Susanoo, only 3 minutes had passed. With his back turned to the group, Shin felt a trickle of blood escape his eye, though it was nothing concerning. First time using Susanoo. He muttered to himself. I'm still a little unrefined. Good thing I've built up enough ocular power. And acquired the Uzumaki vitality beforehand. He could feel it now, the cost of maintaining Susanoo. Every cell in his body screamed from the chakra drain, his life force forcibly being siphoned away. Without his new healing factor, he was certain his lifespan would be significantly shortened. For now, however, it simply left him breathless, as though he had sprinted across an entire country. Slowly, the golden skeletal frame of Susanoo faded, its overwhelming presence retreating back into his body. Without its crushing weight, his healing accelerated. 2 steadying breaths later, and he was back to normal. Can't let the corpses go to waste. Black flames erupted from his eye, consuming the fallen bodies. Within moments, they turned to ashes before flowing back into his right eye. A surge of chakra and vitality flooded his body. Though it failed to fully replenish his ocular power, his body felt completely refreshed. After ensuring his condition was stable, Shin Uchiha turned his attention toward the Uzumaki clan. The Senju shinobi and Tsunade visibly tensed as his gaze met theirs. Despite knowing he had just saved them, there was no guarantee that he was an ally. Conversely, the Uzumaki survivors gazed upon him with gratitude. To them, it did not matter who he was. In their darkest hour, he had been their savior. Uchiha benefactor. One of the older Uzumaki Rashimi finally spoke. What do you desire? Shin Uchiha glanced at Tsunade and the wary Senju before answering. I only speak for myself. But if you must ask, there is something I want. His artificially distorted voice cut through the tense silence. Rashimi, calm and collected, smiled diplomatically. May I ask what it is, benefactor? Despite his age, the elder's instincts told him that this man was not their enemy. If anything, this Uchiha was more straightforward than most. Shin Uchiha did not hesitate. Your clan's sealing techniques. It was a spontaneous decision, but he refused to leave empty-handed. At his request, Rashimi's expression turned awkward. It wasn't that the demand was unreasonable. For the devastated Uzumaki, it cost them nothing. The problem lay in the practicality of it. Due to their rushed escape, the only sealing techniques they had managed to preserve were advanced clan secrets. Even if they handed them over, outsiders wouldn't be able to learn them. Benefactor, the scrolls we have contain only the most complex Uzumaki techniques. They are not easily mastered by those outside our bloodline. Rashimi cautioned. Shin Uchiha remained indifferent. That's fine. Just let me see them. Rashimi hesitated briefly but ultimately relented. Very well. At his signal, a young red-haired girl cautiously stepped forward, holding several scrolls in her arms. She was small, barely reaching his chest, with wild crimson hair cascading down her back. A round face, bright eyes, and a hesitant expression. Shin Uchiha took the scrolls, and on a whim, reached down and pinched her soft cheeks. Cute. He murmured, amused. What's your name? The unexpected action startled her, but seeing that he wasn't hostile, she hesitated before speaking. Kei Kashina. Uzumaki Kashina. Benefactor. Rashimi interjected. This is my granddaughter. She is still young and ignorant. Please forgive her if she offends you. The clan elder was clearly attempting to de-escalate any potential conflict. Now, their lives were in Shin Uchiha's hands. Kushina. A good name. Something clicked in Shin Uchiha's mind. Now he knew why she seemed familiar. With a small nod, he glanced through the scrolls. Adamantine sealing chains, 4-symbol seal, Kagura Mind's Eye, contract seal, Reaper Death seal. He barely skimmed them before handing them back. Consider that my reward, he said. Like a magician, he produced a candy from his pocket and placed it in Kushina's hand. Then, he turned, sparing Tsunoda one last glance. The subtle amusement in his gaze did not go unnoticed. Tsunoda scowled, feeling an unfamiliar irritation. Why did she feel like he was laughing at her? I want to rip that mask off his face, she muttered. Meanwhile, Kushina stared at the candy in her hand, blinking in surprise. Slowly, she peeled the wrapper and popped it into her mouth. In the midst of genocide and despair, a small moment of sweetness bloomed in her heart. Chapter 22, Aftermath. Tsunoda, we, the Uzumaki clan, will not follow you back to Hidden Leaf Village. We are going to Taki no Kuni and will live in seclusion there. If you ever come, we will meet again. Uzumaki Rashimi handed Tsunoda an iron token infused with his chakra. Take this with you. If you ever bring it to Taki no Kuni, the Uzumaki will sense it and came to see you. After that, the two were ready to part ways, but before leaving, Rashimi turned and placed a hand on Kushina's shoulder, guiding her forward. I know you came under Mido-sama's orders to find the next 9 tails Jinchuriki. My granddaughter, Kushina, is strong. Let her go with you. Despite his reluctance, he made his decision. Letting his granddaughter leave with Tsunoda was undoubtedly the best choice for her. The ones leaving for Taki no Kuni were old, sick, or too injured to defend themselves. The journey would be grueling, filled with dangers they could not anticipate. If they were hunted down again, protecting Kushina would be nearly impossible. She was already the only child to survive the attack on Hidden Ecchi village. They couldn't afford to risk her life. Grandpa! Kushina cried, hot tears trailing down her cheeks. She understood why he was doing this, knew it was for her own good, but it didn't stop the pain from crushing her chest. She wanted to go with them, but she would only slow them down. That was a truth she couldn't deny. Gritting her teeth, she swallowed her sorrow and gave them one final blow. Tsunoda remained silent, but her fists clenched, nails digging into her palms until they nearly drew blood. Her hatred for Sarutobi Hiruzen deepened. Had she arrived earlier, this wouldn't have happened. She had learned the truth from Rashimi. Hidden Ecchi village had the means to escape unscathed. Their barriers were impenetrable, their fuinjutsu second to none. If they had received aid, they would have survived. But none came. Their so-called allies abandoned them, forcing them into a slaughterhouse. Now, they no longer trusted Hidden Leaf Village, and Tsunoda had nothing to say in its defense. She kept asking herself, how did the village her grandfather, Hashirama Senju, built become like this? But there was no time to dwell on it. The enemy could still be near. They had to leave. Yet at that moment, on the ruined outskirts of Hidden Ecchi village, Shin Uchiha remained. The shadow clone he sent ahead had gathered intel. A few kilometers away, a group of Uzumaki survivors was being slaughtered. If he hadn't seen it, he wouldn't have cared. But he had seen it. And he owed the Uzumaki clan a favor. He had gained knowledge of their secret techniques, and that knowledge was invaluable. Repaying the debt with a few corpses wasn't too difficult. At high speed, Shin arrived at his destination. A petite figure ran frantically through the forest. Her short red hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt and blood. Behind her, several Hidden Stones village nin chased, their kunai gleaming under the fading sunlight. Compared to the Hidden Stones village chunin, the girl looked utterly powerless. She ran as fast as her legs could carry her, but it wasn't enough. In a matter of seconds, they caught up. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the ground, curling up in fear. Her small hands trembled as she clutched her head. No. Please. Don't kill me. She sobbed. One of the Hidden Stones village nin scoffed. Hurry up. That damn shadow clone slowed us down. We need to get back and report. Yeah. I'm handling it. They barely paid attention to the girl. One of them raised his kunai, preparing to plunge it into her skull like he was butchering an animal. But just as he brought it down, the blade stopped midair. What the hell? The chunin tried to push down, but the kunai wouldn't move, as if an invisible force had locked it in place. Confused, he released it, only to watch in horror as the kunai floated up, twisted, and drove straight into his forehead. His lifeless body hit the ground. The other Hidden Stones village nin barely had time to react before their feet were snared. A thick layer of black iron sand wrapped around them, constricting their bodies like serpents. Magnet style, iron sand binding coffin. A cold voice rang out as Shin clenched his fist, pulling them into the air. At the same time, hidden explosive tags within the iron sand began to glow. Boom. The explosion reduced the two hidden stones village nin to charred husks. Black flames licked at their corpses before vanishing. Their chakra, their vitality, siphoned away and absorbed by Shin. He exhaled, then turned to the girl still huddled on the ground. "You're safe now." His voice was softer, his hand glowing with faint green chakra as he activated the mystical palm jutsu to ease her injuries. At the warmth of his touch, the girl slowly raised her head. Her tear-streaked face, round and delicate, peered up at him with cautious hope. Her short red hair framed her face, dusty and tangled. She looked like a frightened animal. You saved me?" "Yeah. I saved you." To ease her nerves, Shin deactivated his transformation jutsu, revealing his true face. The girl stared at him for a moment before suddenly throwing herself into his chest, clinging to him tightly. He blinked. Okay. Guess we're doing this." Her arms tightened around him, trembling, as she buried her face into his cloak. He sighed and returned the hug, rubbing her back in slow, calming circles. She was small, 8, maybe 9 years old. And she'd just barely escaped death. After a few moments, he carried her to a safe spot, set her down, and pulled out some dry rations. "Eat." She hesitated, then sniffed the food, hunger overriding caution. She stuffed a piece into her mouth, chewing as fast as she could. Only after a few bites did she realize Shin was watching her, smirking. She froze, cheeks burning. Trying to save face, she quickly chewed, swallowing with a gulp. But Shin merely chuckled, handing her a water bottle. "Relax. Eat slowly, drink some water. No need to act cute, you're already cute." Her face turned scarlet. She lowered her head, focusing on her food, but Shin could see the tips of her ears glowing red. He smirked, leaning back. At least she's got some fight in her. He didn't know what he was going to do with her yet, but one thing was certain, she was his problem now. Chapter 23, Uzumaki Kanako. Shin Uchiha lit a bonfire and glanced at the silent girl beside him. To break the heavy silence, he took the initiative to speak. "My name is Shin Uchiha, I'm from Hidden Leaf Village. Tell me your name." Hearing his direct approach, the startled girl stiffened before nervously replying, "Kanako. Uzumaki Kanako. I'm from." Kanako hesitated. The words caught in her throat as painful memories surfaced, her eyes welling with unshed tears. She had barely escaped with her life. Her home was gone. There was nowhere to return to. Noticing her distress, Shin reached out, giving her a gentle pat on the back to soothe her anxiety. "So, where do you plan to go next?" I don't know." Her voice was barely above a whisper as she shook her head, a lost expression on her delicate face. There was nowhere for her. She was just drifting, directionless. Instinctively, her gaze fell on Shin Uchiha, the boy who had saved her. He was only a little older than her, but there was something about him, an air of confidence, strength. A natural leader. She wanted to follow him. And it wasn't just because she had nowhere else to go. There was something deeper, an admiration buried within her heart that compelled her to stay close to him. As if afraid that he would reject her, Kanako hurriedly spoke. "Lord Uchiha, I'm very useful. My mother told me that my body is special." She clenched her fists and took a deep breath before revealing what she had never told anyone. "If someone bites my skin or drinks my blood, they can recover their chakra and stamina." She stared up at him with desperate, pleading eyes. "So please, let me follow you." The moment she spoke those words, her heartbeat quickened. It was a secret her mother had always told her to keep hidden. But right now, all she could think about was proving her worth so that Shin Uchiha wouldn't abandon her. She was weak, helpless, a small, trembling creature searching for shelter. All she wanted was for him to accept her, to give her a place by his side. Shin's eyes flickered with a brief hint of surprise. That ability. It sounded a lot like Uzumaki Karen's. Realization dawned on him. Considering the timeline, Uzumaki Karen hadn't even been born yet. That meant Kanako could very well be Karen's mother. With that in mind, any thoughts of returning her to the Uzumaki clan disappeared. That clan was already on the brink of extinction. If he left her alone, her fate would likely be the same. His hand moved on its own, ruffling her vibrant red hair. A rare smile graced his lips. "Since you want to follow me, then follow me." Kanako froze, her mind blank for a moment before a bright, overjoyed expression took over her face. Her cheeks flushed red, like a ripe apple under the firelight. Without thinking, she stretched out her small hand toward him. "Lord Uchiha, you can bite me to restore your chakra." She bit her lip lightly, mentally preparing herself for the pain to come. Shin's eye twitched. He flicked her forehead. Why the hell would I bite you right now? And don't just offer yourself up like that. You shouldn't treat yourself as a tool. Kanako let out a small yelp, rubbing her forehead. She hadn't expected him to react like that. She just wanted to be useful. But the warmth in his voice, the way he scolded her, it made her feel something unfamiliar. He didn't see her as just some object to be used. That meant more to her than she could put into words. She smiled softly, a genuine, relieved smile. To her, Shin Uchiha was like a god. That night, they slept beside a bonfire, Kanako curled up beside him, finally finding a sense of peace amidst the chaos. The next morning, Shin took her to gather and bury the bodies of her fallen companions. Kanako remained silent the whole time, her hands trembling as she placed stones over the makeshift graves. She was the only one left. Once they finished, Shin made a decision. He wouldn't go looking for more survivors. He had done what he could. It was time to return to the village. But first, he took Kanako to an isolated lake. Take a bath, he told her, already stripping off his own blood-stained cloak. You stink. Kanako's face turned crimson. Why, you don't have to say it like that. Still, she obeyed, slipping into the cold water, washing away the dirt, blood, and sorrow of the past few days. As she bathed, she underwent a transformation. The grime was washed away, revealing delicate, porcelain-like skin. Her crimson hair clung to her small frame like silk. Water droplets traced the curves of her body, glistening in the morning light. She was young, but there was a budding beauty hidden within her. A flower yet to bloom. Shin, standing nearby, caught himself staring for a moment before snapping out of it. Kanako, noticing his gaze, hugged herself. Lord Uchiha, the clothes. Please. Right. He pulled out a spare set he had brought for Mikoto Uchiha and tossed them to her. The outfit was loose on Kanako, the sleeves too long, but it was better than nothing. She fidgeted with the hem of her clothes, biting her lip shyly. All right, let's go. Shin's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. We need to move quickly. Kanako tilted her head in confusion. Eh? What do you mean? Before she could react, Shin reached out, one arm slipping under her knees, the other around her back. With effortless ease, he scooped her up in a bridal carry. What? Kanako's scream rang through the forest as Shin took off at full speed. The wind rushed past them. Kanako clung to him instinctively, her legs kicking slightly before settling down. She was small, light, and the warmth of her body pressed against him made it impossible to ignore her presence. She covered her face with her hands,